right.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Hallie Jackson.
We are coming on the air with breaking news and a serious situation out of New Orleans where at least 10 people have been killed after somebody plowed into a crowd on Bourbon Street. For the very latest, I want to bring in NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa, who is joining us now. And Emily, you can see the emergency vehicles, the emergency response there in New Orleans as people had been celebrating New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. A massive police response to a mass casualty incident, as the city is reporting just moments ago, posting a statement to its website reporting that 10 people have been killed, 30 others injured and transported by emergency services after, they say, a vehicle rammed into a large crowd celebrating overnight. It was near Bourbon Street and Canal Street, a hotspot, a tourist hotspot in the city of New Orleans and in the French Quarter. We are still waiting for more details on the suspected driver, the status of that individual, but we are hoping for a news conference in the next few hours to get more information on this. But again, a massive police presence with 30 people injured, 10 people killed. It comes just weeks after we saw a car ramming attack in Germany at a Christmas market that injured more than 200 people and killed several others. Security has been a main focal point across the country, including in New Orleans, where they enlisted several hundred extra officers to patrol the New Year's Eve celebrations. Also here in New York City, where I am, where there were thousands of officers fanned out across the city to protect what was expected to be around 1 million revelers packing into Times Square to watch the ball drop, despite the thunderstorms that had rolled through. You can hear the sirens and activity behind me as police and security remains to be ramped up. But again, we're still back to New Orleans. The New Year welcomed in, marred by tragedy as we await more details on what happened, but a mass casualty incident, 30 people injured, 10 people killed after a vehicle rammed into the crowd near Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Hallie.
Emily Aketa, thank you very much. I want to bring in our NBC News law enforcement analyst, Jim Kavanaugh, who is joining us now on the phone. Jim, you heard the details there. Dozens of people in the hospital, at least 10 people killed after this horrific situation in New Orleans, as people had been celebrating, gathering in the French Quarter to celebrate 2025, to celebrate New Year's Eve. We know that police around the country at these kinds of events had boosted security, as Emily laid out there. Talk us through the expectation for what happens from here. Obviously, an investigation. Obviously, the focus now on the victims and their families.
Well, it's awful. It's horrible on New Year's Day to have this news right here in America. We just watched it all unfold, Hallie, in Europe, and we all talked about it in the past days. And now we have this. And we have what's shocking is that we have it at one of the most famous intersections really in America, and like many Americans have been on that intersection. You know, some days, you know, we have gone through New Orleans, and Bourbon Street is a famous walk, and many people have made it. And what's shocking to me is that a car could even get into that district on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, because if you just look at any major city, you know, I'm here in Nashville, and they had a huge celebration last night, and the city, you know, the police block the streets off, and they don't allow access to cars. I mean, and this is really the epicenter of New Orleans celebrations, so I'm really shocked that a vehicle could even make it to that location, but nevertheless, the investigation will have to determine, you know, how many are involved, what happened. I mean, is it an intentional attack? It sounds like it must be, but we don't know for sure. I mean, it sounds that way because of the 10 dead, the 30 hurt, and, you know, various reports afterwards that you don't know are just right, because now it's the fog of war. So is it a drunk driver? Is it a terrorist attack? But we don't really know. But I think the gross failure is that a vehicle could even get there.
Jim,
it shouldn't be allowed to even be near there.
You know, our local NBC station down in New Orleans is reporting that a bomb squad is on scene at this location. Would that be something that that law enforcement would do as a precautionary measure at this point?
It's going to be standard operating procedure to bring the bomb squad in, you know, anytime you have a vehicle that's suspected to be in an attack like that, because it can be a multi-pronged attack. In other words, you can have a person who hits with a vehicle, gets out, shoots a gun, or gets out and has a bomb in the car, or gets out and tosses, explosives or hand grenades or anything. And so, yes, they have to treat the car like it might have an explosive device, an improvised, we call IED, in the trunk or somewhere in the car. And then we don't know how we don't know where the assailant is or assailants are in custody. Are they killed? Are they counter the police? So there's a lot to unfold this morning to let us know what happens.
You've laid out some critical questions here, Jim. Chief among them, obviously, was this accidental or intentional? We expect an update, of course, from the city, from law enforcement later on today. When we get that information, you're also describing some of these other key questions that police will have, including how a car managed to get so close to this celebration. I think people know New Orleans. People know what the French Quarter is, Bourbon Street. It's one of the most famous streets in America here, as people had been gathering to celebrate the new year. Walk us through what the steps would have been immediately after this incident happened. Obviously, we're seeing in these images here a massive police and emergency response.
Right. Well, let's start with the failure. I mean, why aren't there barricades? This is one of those famous intersections. Bourbon Street, if it's on Bourbon Street, it needs to be blocked off. It's kind of like Times Square, It has to be blocked off. It's a big area, but NOPD has to, bring in dump trucks full of sand, cement barriers, other vehicles, bulldozers, whatever they got to do to block it off, because you have all these revelers. And so that needs to be the first thing, which I have not seen that in the feed, so I'm not sure that if they did that. Uniformed patrol officers standing around is great, but they're not going to be able to stop a careening vehicle or even a truck coming at you. Even if you shoot at it, even if you maybe kill the driver, the vehicle can keep coming. They can put a dead man switch on the gas pedal. So you can't stop it. You have to have barriers. So that's the first thing. I don't see any barriers from the shots I've seen, so that's disturbing. But that's, of course, first thing is treat the injured, address the families of the deceased with a family center. An OPD command will have to set up a family center to do that. Then the crime scene has to be processed. You're going to have, Louisiana State Police, and you're going to have federal agents helping them. They'll have plenty of resources to do the investigation. And then we have to see, could there be any other Confederates if it's an intentional attack? Is it a drunk driver? I'm just shocked the street's not blocked, so I'm not sure what this is. It could be a drunk driver. We really don't know. But that many people, of course, the streets are so crowded, and we don't have the exact time yet. I haven't heard the exact time when it plowed into the crowd, so that may give us an indication too. But I'm sure that the street was crowded, late into the morning because it's New Year's. So we're just going to have to see what unfolds and what New Orleans police tell us.
Jim Kavanaugh, our NBC News law enforcement analyst. I'm going to ask you to stay close to your phone here as we are looking for more updates throughout the morning on what has unfolded now in New Orleans. This horrific scene that you're seeing here, at least 10 people dead, dozens in the hospital after a car or truck plowed into a crowd of people celebrating New Year's Eve. We want to take you now to local coverage from our NBC News station, WDSU in New Orleans. We'll take you there now.
Iberville. We do have, as we saw, Fletcher Mackle there giving us a live picture. So this is at Bourbon and Orleans. And as you can see, police still blocking off that area. State Police, Wildlife and Fisheries, so many different agencies responding to this mass casualty event. But it's not just Bourbon and the French Quarter. Canal Street, Anum Siddiqui, who's been there since about 4:30 this morning, showed us a sea of law enforcement and first responders there on Canal Street. And Nola Reddy sending out information to folks, letting you know to avoid Canal, avoid the French Quarter, as this is still a very active investigation happening right now. Let me show you some of the images that we've been seeing from Canal Street, where there is that sea of law enforcement. And as you can see behind me, there's still the holiday lights up on Canal Street, followed by that sea of law enforcement on both sides of the street and on the neutral ground. And as you can see, just a huge police and law enforcement first responder presence. This is another picture from Anum. And as you can see, there was just a huge presence there. We've been seeing this all morning. You definitely want to avoid the area. As I said, Nola already sending out that information, letting people know you need to avoid this area. This is likely going to be the scene for most of the day today. And I've been seeing since I was sitting at my computer, this is now becoming national news, and we all want to make sure that we're avoiding this area as law enforcement continues their investigation to get us the very, very latest information. If I could take my maps back a second, I do want to show you that picture from Bourbon Street that Fletcher sent to us, because it's still a very, very active scene. And again, the French Quarter, I'm going to work on making some graphics for y'all to give you an idea of exactly what streets have been blocked off. But pretty much you can just put a square around all of this. North Rampart, we know Canal Street is shut down. Likely going all the way down to Decatur. You will definitely want to avoid this area. A very, very active scene that all started around 4 this morning. I'm going to continue to follow it as far as the traffic goes. What routes do you need to take now? Because it's still going to be thousands of people here in the Crescent City as we anticipate that we're just counting down now to the kickoff of the Sugar Bowl. And those folks obviously going to have a lot of questions about what's going on in a very tourist-heavy area of the city, probably the most tourist-heavy area of the city at a time like this. I will continue to follow it, and I'll have much more.
Yeah, no, Brandy, we appreciate it. We do have crews all over the city right now for this mass casualty event on Bourbon Street. And Kirkpatrick, as well as the head of the state police, Robert Hodges, are expected to give a press briefing. We are told that we should be standing by in a second. Let's take a live look at that press briefing and where it's going to happen. It's going to happen at the 8th NOPD district that is right in the heart of the French Quarter. This is a live look. We have been given a standby. We're going to stand here for just 1 second and hold, because our crew at the scene was told to stand by. So it's our understanding that maybe this might be starting. The mayor is there, Latoya Cantrell. NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick is there, as well as Robert Hodges. He runs the state police. I just spoke moments ago to a spokesperson with the governor. He has been briefed. He is still getting information in real time from the NOPD and from the state police. But as Brandy just said, we are just about 14 hours away from kickoff for the Sugar Bowl, the eyes of the college football world, with tens of thousands of fans from Georgia and Notre Dame are on the city of New Orleans. And then we host the biggest sporting event on planet Earth in early February, the Super Bowl. We have been talking about security preps and plans. A big question that hopefully NOPD and state police will answer: was this a drunk driver? Was this an accident? Is not believed so. Or was this an act of essentially domestic terrorism? Was it intentional that somebody drove a car down Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter? We're going to get off that live look right now. As soon as they start talking, we will take you back live to the French Quarter and Kirkpatrick. Until that happens, let's go live to Fletcher Mackel. He is a couple of blocks away from the 8th District station. Fletcher, what does it look like there? Because you are also following an additional scene, if you will, a possible threat of a suspicious package.
Yeah, Travers, what you're looking at right now is the corner of Bourbon and Orleans, right in front of the Tropical Isle Bar, and you can see that is a law enforcement, some type of bomb unit. They are bringing out the droid right now, their robot unit, to investigate a suspicious package. There's a huge state police presence here right now. One of the troopers that we saw a suspicious package on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans. He immediately called it in, and that triggered what you're seeing right now. Them investigating a suspicious package right now on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans to make sure there isn't some type of second attack, or this isn't part of the original plan. Again, we don't have details. We don't want to speculate. We don't want to jump to conclusions, but we are hearing what they are hearing right now. Cassie reported that NOPD is working on a suspicious package. This is it right now, right in front of Tropical Isle Bar, right on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans. We did our initial live shots for you right from the front of Tropical Isle on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans, and then we were moved back here to Dauphine. We're now by the Gold Mine Saloon, basically between Orleans and St. Anne, and photojournalist Stefan Cage is going to stay on the shot right now to show you the work they continue to do about a block away. But again, there's a half dozen more law enforcement officers in this area as this situation continues to unfold. Again, law enforcement very vigilant right now with a massive perimeter in the French Quarter blocked off.
Yeah, look, Fletcher, Stand by right there. We also have security expert Mike Kahn, former NOPD SWAT team commander. But let's get back to Autumn Siddiqui. She's at the 8th District NOPD station, heart of the French Quarter. Autumn, what we have been reporting from a lot of our sources, more than 10 people tragically killed on Bourbon Street during this mass casualty event, maybe 27 more sent to the hospital as somebody drove a car right down Bourbon Street. We also know that shots were fired. When is this press conference expected to start? Because I think people are trying to get clarity and real information from NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick and from the state police and Colonel Robert Hodges.
Right, Travers. We just heard from NOPD officials to stand by and that any moment right now, NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick is supposed to come out and address us here. That is when I will ask her all those questions and run those numbers by her. Like you mentioned, at least 10 people killed, almost 30 people hurt. I will ask exactly those questions to her to get those numbers confirmed. Other things that I plan on asking her all around social media, and witnesses I've spoken to tell me that they witnessed a white F-150 plow onto Bourbon Street, running over so many people. That is also something that I do want to confirm with her. And we've been standing out here for about half an hour now, so I do want to tell you what we've been noticing. I've seen, of course, dozens of NOPD officers here. We've seen the homicide unit here. We've seen also the FBI, Louisiana State Police. So we do expect several agencies to address us. Of course, we will run that media briefing here on air and also online. That way you all at home who may have had family or friends or on Bourbon Street and just concerned about what's happening in our city, that way you all can tune in. Travers, back to you.
Yeah, Autumn, keep us posted. Give us an update. We're going to come back live because everybody wants to get the latest information. But here is what we know. We know that at least 10 people, possibly 12, have been killed. Tens of thousands of people are in the city for the Sugar Bowl right now. Notre Dame fans, Georgia fans, on top of the fact this is one of the biggest tourism weekends or tourism times in the city of New Orleans, with tens of thousands of people here to celebrate New Year's. Let's go back to security expert Mike Kahn. Mike, it is appearing more and more likely that this was not a drunk driver. Incidents like we've seen before in 2017 and 2019, when drunk drivers, Tashanti Tony as well as Nielsen Rizzuto, plowed their vehicles into people after Mardi Gras carnival parades in other parts of the city. It is seeming to be like this is going to be an intentional act. Bourbon Street is not drivable. There are bollards on the street that prevent that. NOPD also has cranes in the sky with spotters. How can something like this happen on Bourbon Street with so many law enforcement officers down there? I know we just reported 2 days ago, more than 300 NOPD officers are assigned to that one area of the French Quarter.
So you can do your best to prevent an incident like this. In this incident, again, if you had bollards up and you had other things that were set up like we have in the past, then that prevents a vehicle from further egressing through the street and creating more carnage. You can't stop it completely from entering the area without a massive amount of, say, dump trucks filled with sand or things like that. So we don't know what we don't know still. We don't know how far they got down, how many blocks they got down, and what their intent was. And we should find that out by now. NOPD, state police, the FBI should have that. And I'm sure they're putting everything together so they want to sound, reasonable when they speak to you and give you a press conference.
Yeah, and Mike, look, if this is an act of domestic terrorism, and it's hard to wrap your head around something like that because no one wants to believe that something like this can happen in their city, but unfortunately we see it play out all too often across America these days. Are they going to the person's home? Was the person on scene? We do understand that shots were fired. Would the NOPD, if somebody was driving down Bourbon Street intentionally, be allowed to use lethal force to stop somebody like this on Bourbon Street?
And in answer to that question, yes, that individual would. So anyone who is trying to take the life of someone else or engaged in taking the life of someone else, you do have the right to use lethal force in order to prevent that person from furtherance of taking someone else's life. In this situation, if you have multiple police officers at different angles shooting in a moving vehicle, it can be where other people end up getting shot. It can be where civilians end up getting shot. But you have have to stop that vehicle from continuing to engage in that threat and taking more lives.
All right, Mike Kahn, great insight in light of what's a tragic event here. Stand by. We're going to have much more with you coming up. If you are joining us live at 6:30 a.m., on the new year here in New Orleans, we are following tragic news, a mass casualty event right in the heart of the most famous neighborhood in the state of Louisiana, the French Quarter. According to police, just after 3 a.m., a truck plowed down Bourbon Street, killing more than 10 people, maybe as many as 12, and injuring at least 27 others. It is an active scene right now. We do not know if it was a drunk driver or possibly some act of domestic terrorism that was intentionally done. We have crews all over downtown and the French Quarter. We'll bring you the very latest information. Also, the NOPD Superintendent, Ann Kirkpatrick, and the Mayor of New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, are in the French Quarter. They are at the 8th District Precinct right now on Royal Street. We are expecting them to give a press briefing very soon. As soon as that happens, we will bring it to you live here. Before we do, let's start off our coverage with Aubrey Killian. He is live at University Medical Center. That is the only level 1 trauma center in the state of Louisiana and Southeast Louisiana right now. That is where all these people have been taken. Aubrey, a tragic scene, but what is the very latest information that you have from UMC?
Hey, Travers. So New Orleans EMS, they have been working very hard all morning long, giving us new details and new information on this tragic and devastating story that we've been staying on top of all morning. Behind me here at UMC, the sun is starting to come up. You can see the cars going up and down the entrance ramp. But here's what I can tell you. According to New Orleans EMS, 10 dead, 30 transported by EMS across 5 local hospitals. They have additional units staged downtown at this time as well. They say those hospitals are University Medical Center, Toro, East Jefferson General Hospital, Ochsner, Maine, and Ochsner Baptist. They all receive patients. UMC with the most, 14 patients transported by EMS to UMC. I asked them too, were any of the victims first responders? They said they could not confirm that at this time. They'll have to defer to NOPD for that. But they did say no EMS personnel were injured. They're also telling me the scene is still actively being worked, and NOPD is asking the public to stay clear of the area. New Orleans EMS is also asking residents and visitors of New Orleans to activate 911 service responsibly for emergencies only. EMS has additional staff on duty right now to continue to respond to 911 calls. So again, this is what it's like here at UMC. We did see NOPD on the entrance ramp. We also saw Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office units on the entrance ramp at this time. But again, 10 people dead, about 30 injured. Stay with me on this developing story. Back to you.
Yeah.
What is taking place, and there will be no questions because we are continuing to investigate. We will have an updated briefing at 11. We'll be at police headquarters. If that changes, we will let you know, and for 3 p.m. And with that, we will get our group behind us to assemble. As I said, we will have 3 to 4 of our leaders speaking. We won't be able to take questions because we are still actively investigating this situation. And with that, move on to assemble, so let's get in position for where you are.
You have been watching our NBC News special report coverage from our local NBC station in New Orleans, WDSU, as we have been reporting on this horrific scene that has unfolded in New Orleans on Bourbon Street this morning. At least 10 people killed. 30 at least people have been sent to the hospital after a car or truck plowed into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street. So you're looking again at that local affiliate coverage we just saw. We are waiting now moments away from a news conference that is set to begin. You just heard a bit of a tee up there. We expect to hear, of course, from the head of the New Orleans Police Department. She will deliver an update here. And chief among the questions, was this accidental? Was this intentional? You have been listening to the reporting suggesting that this was a very scary moment for so many people. Obviously, this deadly tragedy. You can see police now waiting to step forward to the microphone as we expect an update potentially from the DA as well, potentially from the mayor, LaToya Cantrell, in New Orleans there, as it looks like this news conference is getting started again, coming to us from our local affiliate, WDSU, in New Orleans. We're going to take you there to this news conference. We expect more, of course, throughout the morning, but this critical information, let's listen in.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, we do know that The city of New Orleans was impacted by a terrorist attack. It's all still under investigation. You'll hear more after me. However, I have been in direct contact with the White House, with Governor Landry, and of course a unified command who is present here. What I'm asking at this time are prayers for those who have lost their lives in the city of New Orleans due to this tragedy. In addition to that, I'm asking the public to stay clear of 8 blocks around Bourbon Street. Stay clear from Bourbon Street, 8 blocks around. Very active, and again, a unified command is in place right now. I'm going to ask Chief Kirkpatrick to give you an update. You're then going to hear from our agent in charge relative to the FBI. So at this time, Chief Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to give you as much of the information I possibly can. We are going to give you an update a couple of times today. So we will give you just the basics this morning, all right? We had this event started at about 3:15. It did involve a man driving a pickup truck down Bourbon Street at a very fast pace, and it was very intentional behavior. This man was trying to run over as many people as he possibly could. It was not a DUI situation. This is a more complex and more serious based on the information we have right now. With respect to numbers, we have right now, and as you already know, this could change throughout the day. We do know that there are 26 injured people who are at UMC Hospital. We know we have 4 at Turo, 4 at Ochsner Baptist, 1 at Tulane, but even as I was walking out the door, I believe I have an unconfirmed additional people who have been taken to other area hospitals, possibly on the east side. But we will give you as many correct numbers as we can as the day progresses. It is a very tragic situation for me to tell you that we know we have 10 people that this man killed on Bourbon Street. That is why we do not want anyone on Bourbon Street today. Wherever you see yellow tape, please do not violate this tape. This is in order to protect and stabilize the scene. We have information to a certain degree of the demographics of those who are in the hospital right now. We do not know at this point how many could be tourists versus locals, but from the information I have right now, it seems the majority are locals versus tourists. What I also can tell you is that this man, this perpetrator, he fired on our officers from his vehicle when he crashed his vehicle. 2 of our officers have been shot. They are stable, and we will give you an update on them. I have yet been able to go to the hospital. I will be leaving here for us to go visit our officers. We have called in every officer that we have. We have so much appreciated our partnerships who have also offered us staff. Last night, we had over 300 officers out here. And because of the intentional mindset of this perpetrator who went around our barricades in order to conduct this, he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. Because of the nature and the indices that we have on the scene, and we have enough information that the FBI will be taking over this investigation. And with that, I am going to be asking, this is the Assistant agent in charge. This is Agent Duncan, Special Agent Duncan, and she has taken over this case on behalf of us and the FBI. As always, we will be in partnership with all of our partners, but Agent Duncan, if you want to have a few words for everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Alethea Duncan. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge for FBI New Orleans. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on. Our goal is to provide you additional information at the 11 a.m. press conference. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch.
Yes, I will say that we want our community and our visitors to continue enjoying. There's so much to enjoy about New Orleans, and we are going to make sure that our routes in the Superdome are safe today for the game. And yet we had this tragic event, and we're sorry again to everyone in our community. But we do want you to go about the day, as we say, just stay away from Bourbon, okay?
Can you elaborate on the device? You did say something about the device.
We actually are not going to be taking questions this morning until we have more information. That's why we will give you an 11 o'clock briefing. So until then, please hold your questions. We will give you everything that we possibly can, okay? So 11 o'clock, we will see you at the headquarters, and we will go again from there, okay? No questions, no questions right now.
The device is confirmed? Thank you all. We will see you at 11.
All right, so a lot of details coming up. They're not taking any questions. Just to recap, the mayor came out the gate calling this a terrorist attack on Bourbon Street. Just after 3:15 a.m., a man intentionally drove a truck, it's our understanding, down Bourbon Street. He went around the barricades to do that.
You have been listening to our local NBC News station there, WDSU, for that news conference, of course, from the superintendent of New Orleans Police, describing, in her words, a man hell-bent on creating carnage, intentionally, she says, driving into a crowd of people during New Year's Eve celebrations on Bourbon Street. This individual then fired on police officers. 2 officers have been shot. We know that as of right now, at least 10 people have been killed in this deadly incident that the mayor described as a terrorist attack. There also, according to the agent in charge there, the FBI agent that we heard from, appears to be an improvised explosive device that they are looking into in the same area in the French Quarter. To be clear, police are saying this was absolutely intentional, that this man was trying to run over as many people as he possibly could, in her words, that he went around barricades in order to be able to create this carnage, essentially. We know that about 30 people have been sent to the hospital now to be treated for their injuries, and we expect another update a little bit later on this morning. The police chief says that the majority of the individuals who are hurt appear to be locals, keeping in mind, remember, that the Sugar Bowl, huge football game, is tonight at the Superdome in New Orleans. You heard a reference to that there at the end. You have a lot of people who are in this city from out of town, fans, obviously, college football fans that have come in to be able to, they had hoped, celebrate last night and tonight. This has obviously turned into a very different situation, a very different scene there, as you see the aftermath of what happened this morning on the right side of your screen, on the left side, continuing our local coverage now from WDSU. We'll take you back now to that local coverage to listen in for a little bit longer.
And those are the very latest details. If you are just joining us, just after 6:43 a.m., a mass casualty event on Bourbon Street. A man intentionally drove a vehicle around barricades down a packed Bourbon Street, killing 10 people and injuring 30 more people who were at area hospitals. We have the very latest information. We have crews all over the metro area right now to bring you the very latest. Let's get live. I believe we're going to Fletcher Mackel first, who is in the French Quarter. Fletcher, you just heard those details. The FBI said they did find IEDs, not something you hear about in a major city, especially New Orleans in the French Quarter.
No, and we showed you some images. We were on Bourbon Street on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans, and we were moved to Dauphine about a block away because we were by a state police trooper who noticed what he felt like was a suspicious package. So they moved the perimeter back at least a block because they are being vigilant and hypersensitive because of what was just detailed by the police superintendent and law enforcement officials, and they certainly want to prevent any type of second attack as well. And right now, most of the streets here in the French Quarter are still blocked. There's a lot of people just waking up and finding out what's happening, coming to work this morning and not being able to get into the French Quarter. I'm also going to step out of the way right now because this is one of those really eerie, sad situations. You're looking at maybe the most iconic structure in the city of New Orleans, the St. Louis Cathedral, and as photojournalist Stefan Cage zooms out, you see police cruisers. You know, this is supposed to be a festive time, ringing in the new year, a fresh start, everybody having fun, enjoying the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Notre Dame tonight, getting ready for the biggest event that our city's going to host in a long time, Super Bowl 59. And instead, we're talking about tragedy and chaos. And so, again, our beautiful city dealing with chaos once again as law enforcement has the majority of the French Quarter around Bourbon Street from Canal all the way to St. Anne blocked off right now. And now the perimeter extends not just from Bourbon, but also to Dauphine as they investigate what could be a suspicious package, which is, again, something that you don't hear very often in a city like this. So that's the very latest from here, Travers. And again, just a sad, I keep looking at it, the beautiful St. Louis Cathedral and in law enforcement police cruisers everywhere because of what transpired about 3 hours ago.
Yeah, look, Fletcher, the eyes of the world are on New Orleans right now, not just for the Sugar Bowl that kicks off in about 14 hours. Tens of thousands of visitors. The teams are here in the city. The chief says they are going to protect the Superdome and the city tonight. But in just about 5 weeks, New Orleans is hosting its record 11th Super Bowl. It is the biggest sporting event on planet Earth, and this is the last thing that anybody wants to see happen. But if you are just waking up with us, a lot of families are waking up across the country and here in New Orleans, and they're hearing the news and they're trying to reach out to their loved ones. If I got the numbers right here from Ann Kirkpatrick, about 35 people remain at area hospitals all across New Orleans. 10 people, tragically, have been killed. The mayor calling this a terrorist attack. Someone went around barricades and intentionally drove down Bourbon Street with the intent to harm or kill people. He then opened fire on NOPD officers. 2 officers returned fire. 2 officers were shot. They are in stable condition at this point. Brittany Werner is joining our coverage right now. Brittany, you were also in the French Quarter. What are you seeing where you are?
Yeah, Travers, well, terrible situation to be waking up to and a terrible way to be ringing in the new year after a mass casualty event like this. Right now, we're standing right near Canal and Bourbon Street. I'm going to show you what it looks like behind me. Dozens of police officers here right now, detectives investigating. We just learned from Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick that the FBI is now taking over this investigation because of the severity of this case. We also learned that there were potential explosive devices that were found, and they're working right now to see if those are active. Now, superintendent and city leaders also said that this was not a drunk driving event, as you just mentioned. This was intentionally performed with that man driving into that crowd. So again, lots of people right now waking up, learning what's happening with the situation. City leaders are asking people to avoid this area if you can, because obviously there are lots of streets blocked off here. Canal is blocked off for about an 8-block radius. We're seeing a lot of people starting to check out of their hotels and leave out this morning. Just such a serious event that happened right now. And so we're supposed to get another update at 11 this morning. That's going to be the next briefing where we learn a little bit more. But right now, they are potentially looking at this as a terror event that happened right here in the French Quarter. Terrible way to start off 2025. Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick also said that the majority of people right now, it seems that they are local for the ones who were hurt in this incident. As you mentioned, Travers, over 30 people in the hospital right now. And we do know at least 10 people have died due to this event. So extremely serious, which is why detectives are here and city leaders officers are asking that people avoid this area so that you can stay away while they conduct their investigation. And again, as we mentioned, explosive devices found in the car of that man who performed this attack. So there's just a lot going on right now, a lot to iron out, and a lot of unanswered questions that we have. You saw that they didn't even let the media ask questions as of right now because everything is still fluid. But again, we're supposed to get another update at 11 this morning. Stick with WDSU on air and online as we bring you the latest concerning what's going on. Back to you, Travers.
Yeah, look, Brittany, and just to bring people up to...
You have been watching our NBC News special report with the help from our local NBC station, WDSU, down there in New Orleans, with continuing coverage of what has happened on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter throughout the morning. A truck ramming into a crowd, killing at least 10 people. The driver, according to police, then opening fire, shooting 2 police officers. It's not clear what their conditions are. There is also separately now, or not separately, an improvised explosive device that is also being investigated. For more on that, let me bring in our NBC News correspondent, Tom Winter, who's joining us now on the phone. Tom, is the assumption that this IED they're looking into connected to the car ramming?
Well, that's what they're trying to determine, Hallie. Just to update, the 2 police officers you referenced that were shot following this incident when the vehicle came to a stop. Apparently, those 2 officers are in, quote, stable condition. Don't know how serious their injuries were. Back to the explosive, as far as the potential explosive, they're obviously going to look at things in the car. We've seen this on a number of these types of incidents where somebody will try to have something that's either improvised in the car or something they could throw. How effective that might be, whether it is an actual device or whether it's something just to try to slow down police as they investigate, because they have to look into those types of things. All of that is unclear. That's all going to be part of the investigation. The fact that the FBI is taking this over indicates that there is a national security component to it, that there is a federal nexus. As police and officials in New Orleans made it quite clear, this is not an accident. This was not a driver who was impaired from alcohol or drugs. This is a terrorist attack, they are calling it. And so the investigation at least has uncovered some sense of a motive at this point in order for them to say that. So did this individual make some statements? Are they in custody? What is their current status? All questions we don't have, but clearly there is something that was either found in the car, on the suspect's person, or something that this individual said that leads them to believe that this is in fact a terrorist attack. As you heard from our coverage at WDSU and from the reporter at the scene, Fletcher Mackel, he was stating that there was that they are continuing to look for other suspicious packages and pushing the scene back. That's what makes sense. They can slow this down now. The incident is clearly over. But there will obviously, of course, be questions raised as to how any vehicle could get down Bourbon Street, given the fact, Hallie, that just 2 days ago, we highlighted information from law enforcement, from a memo that was put around as far as New Year's Eve celebrations, highlighting this from the Department of Homeland Security and from law enforcement officials and agencies here in New York, just about the heightened possibility of this. And there's been a number of these type of incidents over the past 3 to 5 years. There was a recent incident at a Christmas market in Germany, as you may remember, in the last couple of weeks, an individual conducting a ramming attack there. So this is not a new kind of MO. This is something that has been in terrorist propaganda for pretty much a decade now, consistently, as far as you don't necessarily need a gun, you don't necessarily need to build a bomb, you just get a truck and you can do a lot of damage, as unfortunately we are waking up to in New Orleans today. So obviously a serious situation. You highlighted the fact that there is a major event that is slated to take place there in the form of a college football game that is of national importance. So that's something that is the next challenge for New Orleans, but certainly a lot going on. And this is this is going to become a major investigation here this morning.
Let me take a couple of pieces to what you've just laid out here, Tom, and let me start with the barricades that were put up, apparently in place, according to the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department here. She says that this driver went around those barricades to be able to get into what is a heavily congested area, really the heart of the party, if you will, on New Year's Eve in New Orleans over the course of the last 12 hours or so. Talk about the security here, because you have been reporting over the last several days on a boosted security posture in places like Times Square, in cities coast to coast here in the United States and around the world, because of the fear of an incident exactly like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that all departments really need to think about, and all agencies need to think about. And here in New York last night, if you were going to try to do that, for instance, you would have been met with police vehicles, but you would have been met with sanitation trucks on top of actual physical barricades. And you're not getting through a fully laden down. They dump sand in them, these massive trucks that are designed to stop or at least slow down something like this, so you don't have that happen. But look, we don't have all the particulars. It happened at 4:15 Eastern Time. Was there an area where this individual had some knowledge of? Were they trying to conduct a delivery? And so as a result, they were able to get around what police had been put in place, or at least stated that that's what they were trying to do. All sorts of information we don't know, but clearly the end result was a truck was able to get on Bourbon Street, according to officials there, at a high rate of speed, and we're looking at a tragic situation. So the idea that somebody could do this, not new, been a focus of police departments for a long time. The idea that this type of thing could happen is not surprising, and so I'm sure that there'll be a lot of questions answered. But the first one is, why do they suspect that this incident is terrorism? Who is this individual? Is there a further ongoing threat in New Orleans? And what else do we know about them or their background or their past? That's all information that we're trying to that's all information that we're trying to gather at this point. But for a mayor to come out and call it terrorism off the bat, and for the FBI to have the investigation, it sure seems like we're going down a certain path with this investigation.
And then you look ahead to what's happening in New Orleans tonight, the Sugar Bowl, of course, that critical college football game. You have fans from Georgia, from Notre Dame in town. It's about roughly maybe a mile away from the French Quarter here, Tom. There's a massive police presence on Bourbon Street. There will be a massive investigatory presence there, but there will also be security in place at the Superdome for the Sugar Bowl as well. It is a huge undertaking now for this department.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge undertaking for them, and so I'm guessing that the entire posture is going to change now. They will really lock down these areas, and my guess is that they will probably see if they can get with their Department of Transportation or their Public Works and be able to put up those physical, we call them in New England or in the Northeast, Jersey barriers. Other parts of the country call them K barriers, but they're those concrete barriers that divide highways. That's really probably their best bet, and to line up sanitation trucks and just keep the vehicle paths to and from the Superdome free of anybody trying to get through. It creates hazards, though. It's not just that simple. I mean, we've dealt with this in New York when there was a terrorist attack that took place on the West Side Highway, but it was on the bike path there. And for years, that bike path, there were barricades, but it wasn't the type of barricade that you could be prevented from driving a truck around, because it's a bike path, and of course people have medical emergencies or maybe have an accident on that. So the belief was, well, we always need to be able to get EMS and ambulances down that bike path, which makes a lot of sense. Now that's since changed here in New York, but that's the other challenge of this. The more you lock an area down and build it in, the harder it is to get to when you need to get to it. So all of that's going to need to be weighed, and it's going to need to be weighed in the next 12 hours effectively, Hallie.
And Tom, you talked about the FBI coming in now. We saw that Assistant Special Agent in Charge deliver her update at that news conference. We expect more updates in the hours to come. The feds are a critical part of this investigation now as well, for the reasons you've described, the national security potential concerns here too.
Right. So once they determine that there's perhaps something that they know about the motive or the background of this individual, or their any sort of postings or any sort of things that's on them, once there is a nexus to federal law, that's a situation where the FBI would take over or work in conjunction with, because at that point it's something that would be charged federally potentially, or others could be charged federally. Again, we don't know the status of this alleged suspect, so that's something we need to get more clarity on. But that's an indication that there's a national security component to it, or that there's something outside of the ordinary, which just in listening to the New Orleans superintendent of police, it's clear, as we said at the beginning, this was no accident.
Tom Winter, our NBC News law enforcement and national security correspondent. Tom, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to stand by as it is now 8 o'clock on the East Coast here, 8 in the morning, and we are coming on the air with breaking news for this NBC News special report. We have learned that just after 3 o'clock this morning, police in New Orleans say a man driving a pickup truck plowed into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter who had been celebrating New Year's, killing at least 10 people. More than 30 people are in the hospital as we speak with injuries. This driver then apparently opened fire on 2 police officers. Both of those officers were shot. We understand they are in stable condition at this hour. They are also now investigating an improvised explosive device that is in the French Quarter as well, a kind of suspicious package here. All of it happening just hours before the Sugar Bowl is set to begin in New Orleans, drawing crowds of college football fans. The superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department says this driver was, in her words, hell-bent on creating carnage, on creating damage. The New Orleans mayor has called this a terrorist attack, clearly intentional. This driver was at a very fast clip, driving very quickly, apparently past barricades that had been put in place at what was supposed to be the heart of the party in New Orleans for New Year's Eve. We want to take you back now to our local coverage from our NBC station in New Orleans, WDSU, for more.
Had this whole incident of a man driving down Bourbon, hitting multiple people, then crashing his car. We actually see the video that was sent to us from a viewer, crashing his car into a construction vehicle, then firing at police. We are being told by our sources within NOPD that that person who was driving is not alive anymore. That's what we're being told by police, or at least by our sources within police. And we are being told at least 2 officers were shot during that shootout. But I'm going to take a step aside so you guys can see. More officers are kind of moving in the area. It's a little bit more movement than what we saw this morning. I mean, earlier everyone kind of was just waiting around. I'm pretty sure it was kind of waiting to see what they should do with the situation with that possible IED that was found further down the way. I mean, it's not moving. If you are trying to get in this area, you're being told to avoid it because this is going to be the scene for most of the day. A lot of law enforcement officers. And, you know, one of the things is, guys, it is 7:02 this morning. People are just getting out and about. I mean, I'm seeing people, Georgia fans, as we speak, walking right by us, trying to figure out what exactly happened last night, because some people are just waking up with us right now. I know we've been up since 4 a.m. talking about this, but some people had no idea that this happened. And so we are just kind of waiting right now. But the reason why, guys, we cannot see, they've blocked, you can see right here, they blocked it with the fire truck. They've been blocking it with the mounted police. They do not want us to see the scene. It is not pretty. And I'm being told by some restaurant owners in the area that it was scary for everyone that was in that area, and you don't want to see this. In fact, now they're going to move the fire truck. Do you mind if we go ahead and let's see? I'm going to actually move you guys for a second. Let me take that, Neil, from you. Here we go. This is going to be the first look that we've had from this area, so you guys can look all the way down. We're going to have my photojournalist get set up for you guys, so this is continuing to change. It looks like they have cleared more than what we saw initially when I first got here, but you can see, looking all the way down, police officers, crews going down. The patrolmen are going to be walking right in front of us in a second, I have a feeling. But what we can see is cars. It looks like cars have been wrecked, so maybe those cars were in the area. We're seeing debris looking down over here. Let me see if I can look over here and look into the camera a little bit, Neil, if you don't mind. Okay, yep, the horses are going to be in the way now. This has been the constant thing of us trying to get an idea of what exactly it looks like right now. But guys, we're going to continue to stay here, try to get as much information as possible. My sources with NOPD say the FBI has taken over. Homicide is in there. The coroner's office has been back there as well. We've seen a lot of times with these cars right here, they've been moving down. But yeah, guys, I'm going to keep you guys up to date with the latest as soon as we get there. But for now, reporting here on Bourbon and Canal Street, I'm Cassie Sherm. I'm going to send it back to y'all.
All right, yeah, Cassie, and just
We were looking there, of course, at the area in New Orleans where this incident happened, as we have been taking our local coverage from our NBC station WDSU in New Orleans there. We're joined now by Rob D'Amico, former FBI agent who worked in counterterrorism for more. Rob, you have been watching this. You have been hearing the updates coming in. We know at least 10 people killed, dozens in the hospital, 2 officers shot, and now this investigation into a potential improvised explosive device. Talk us through some of the biggest questions that you have moving forward, as in your line of work, this kind of scene that we are looking at here is exactly what agents, what law enforcement had hoped to avoid.
Absolutely. I think the big one, looking at, and when I first heard this morning, I was actually doing a news clip on the guy with all the homemade explosive devices, and I saw this, and the first thing I thought of is the Christmas parades in Germany, that there was intel that an intelligence agency pushed to the Germans about this. Was there anything else in that intel bulletin that may point to this looking at the U.S.? I had said it could be a triggering event. It may not be something that was planned, but it may have been that someone saw that event in Germany and thought about this. So if you're looking at it, a vehicle used in a crowd, and then this plan comes together at an event that's very large, a lot of people out on the street, it's known that a vehicle can kill a whole bunch of people. That, as we've seen, it's one of the more effective. I think one of the surprising, not surprising, but this is up a clip in the fact that he engaged law enforcement with a weapon after, and he might have a IED device in his car. So that's a 3-stage kind of event that they were looking at. So it doesn't surprise me because, again, I don't know if this was something that was talked about online, or if it was an event that this person saw happen in Germany just before Christmas that then gave him ideas to do this. But I definitely think it's a terrorist event. Even if he's not connected to a group, this kind of event inflicts terror on people. And now you're looking at the Sugar Bowl, you know, how people are going to be afraid to even walk to the venue there and stand around in crowds. So it's pushing terror.
How taxing is it on law enforcement, Rob, to be able to have to do this investigation into what happened this morning while also looking ahead to the massive college football event, the Sugar Bowl, in town tonight?
Well, New Orleans is a big police department, and the FBI is now involved. So I think what you have to do is just, call everybody in. I guarantee FBI, New Orleans PD, everyone, phones went off, getting them into the office. You're going to have to look at this as a criminal event as far as evidence, gather that, seal it off, and then have probably a working committee, which they already had for the Sugar Bowl. The Joint Terrorism Task Force, I'm sure, is manning up for that, and then start looking at precautions for the Sugar Bowl. So if you break it down into priorities of getting this done as far as evidence, and then looking forward to the safety and security of the Sugar Bowl, and both agencies big enough to do it. FBI is probably flying other people in or getting them from field offices close to provide additional support.
The governor calling it this morning a horrific act of violence that happened on Bourbon Street. As you look ahead even further out here, Rob, you've got Mardi Gras coming up next month, I think it is, in just weeks from now. You've got other huge events that are set to happen in New Orleans soon. The security posture is always such a focus for big celebrations like New Year's Eve, like for some of these other events. If you were advising, if you were working on something like this, what changes would you make?
Well, I would have already made them with what happened in the Christmas event. They said he got around several barricades or barriers. Well, obviously they weren't very good barriers. I mean, you look at an event in like New York City where they use garbage trucks and big dump trucks so that no vehicle can get in. Why should a vehicle have access, unless it's a police vehicle, into an area like Bourbon Street where everyone's just walking around going from bar to bar drinking? Like, there should be no vehicle access at all. There's even smaller barricades that you can use, that police can use by hand, move back and forth. But I really think you have to look at it in layers. There's a part that no vehicles get in, and how do you prevent that? And then having defense in depth where there's multiple layers that no one can even get up to speed to even get past barriers. So I think events like this, they thought they had the proper barriers and security set up. I think events like this show if someone's really motivated, they can get through a bunch of that unless you really make it hard. Now, it also makes it hard to get to event, and then it ties up traffic and it does all those other things that they're hesitant to do. But you really have to look at the safety of the people. And, if you were going to the Sugar Bowl, would you care if it was tough to get in as long as you felt safe when you got there? Probably not.
You talk about the three pieces to what happened this morning: the truck driving into the crowd, the gunshots that were fired, police say, by the driver, hitting at least 2 officers, and then this improvised explosive device that they're looking into as well. How long might it typically take for law enforcement to assess this apparently homemade explosive potentially detonated, or assess that it's not a threat as well? Should we be hearing more about that, I would imagine, in the next couple of hours?
Oh, absolutely. Explosive ordnance disposal has, since Iraq and Afghanistan has really come around far. So I guarantee the bomb squad's already on it. They're looking at it. If they're going to get it into a safe container, either render it safe there if they can't, but they're going to get it into a safe container and get it out of that area. That's one of the quickest things they're going to do. They have to, and then get the, obviously the evidence around the scene. But like that device itself is going to have evidence. They want to save it. In Iraq and Afghanistan, we're getting fingerprints off of the tape on the devices because the bomb makers weren't really careful when they put it together. So it could lend. It points back to the one-person thing, or if there's other people's fingerprints on there besides the person who's driving the truck, it may lead to multiple people in a planning of this event.
Rob D'Amico, former FBI agent, thank you so much for being with us this morning as we are covering all of this that is happening in New Orleans now. At least 10 people killed, dozens of others hurt after a man driving a pickup truck plowed into a crowd of people at about 3 o'clock this morning, just after 3 a.m. We want to take you back now to our NBC News local station, WDSU, with continuing coverage here in New Orleans. Let's listen in.
Head that drives them to the point of conducting one of these attacks. What that is, how this all came about, that's just information we don't know yet. That's information that needs to be developed from the investigation, obviously.
Yeah, look, Tom, before we let you go, we appreciate you jumping on with us here. Obviously, people will try to unpack the details on who this person was. We don't know yet. It is our understanding through sources that the person has been killed. But how big of a deep dive do they do? Are they trying to identify the person now, possibly go to his home, identify contacts? Because clearly this was intentional. This was not a drunk driver, as the police chief said.
Yeah, that's right. So what they're going to do is they're going to look at the vehicle. They're going to run the plates on that. Is it matched to this particular individual? Was it a rental car? We see the rental car is used often. So was it a rental vehicle that was used? When was it signed out? If so, where did it come from? If it is a private vehicle, does it belong to the suspect? If not, who did it belong to? Those individuals immediately get a look at. So, it's kind of a situation where they can, as much information as they can get, and if this person had any sort of ID on them, they'll be able to develop a lot of information right away as far as who their background is. And then various investigative squads at the FBI, the New Orleans Police Department, their detectives, they'll work together to immediately fan out and try to contact as many people as possible. And they'll also look to put together a search warrant, probably filed federally or perhaps locally, whatever is the easiest way to do it, depending upon where this person is from, to be able to immediately lawfully search that. And there's a lot of things they can do in this person's communications. It's exigent circumstance warrant. They'll be able to get a lot of information pretty fast.
All right, Tom Winter, NBC investigative reporter. We know you're following this from New York, as is the network, as this has become a worldwide headline, unfortunately, in New Orleans on January 1st. If you are just joining us at 7:15, we are following a breaking news story, what the mayor is calling an act of terrorism on the streets of New Orleans on Bourbon Street. Just after 3:15 a.m., a man intentionally drove around barricades, possibly those bollards on Bourbon Street, driving down Bourbon Street with the intention to harm and kill people. 10 people have died, more than 30 at area hospitals. The man then exchanged gunfire with NOPD officers. It is our understanding through sources this person, who is not identified, has been shot and killed at this time. 2 NOPD officers also shot and injured. The police superintendent says they are both in stable condition at an area hospital. We do have Aubrey Killian at USC. We're going to get to him in just 1 second. We also have numerous crews all over the city of New Orleans. My brother Fletcher Mackel, as well as Anam Siddiqui and Brittany Verder. We are going to get to you in just 1 second. Let's go back to Cassie Sherm before we get to Aubrey at UMC.
Yeah, Travers, we are just seeing for the first time at least what Bourbon Street looks like from here on Canal and Bourbon Street. We're about a 2-minute walk from where that scene happened, and I'm heartbroken. I really am heartbroken what we're seeing right now, because we are still seeing red light tarps covering things that are down Bourbon. That's why the police officers are back now in front of us. It's just awful. A lot of people are just waking up to this. Oh, some people have been out of their hotels this entire time because they could not even get back to their hotels because everything's been roped off. So we have a lot of people that are just standing by, just trying to figure out what's going on. Some people are like asking, do you know any of the victims? Do you know anything like that? What we do know is at least 30 people have been injured. 10 people are now dead after this deadly incident, after a man drove through the barricades over in this area here, made it around the barricades to go through. And I mean, it is a very heavy scene over here. Just a lot of sadness from people in this area. A tragedy, a complete tragedy, very tense too, because officers never want to see anything like this happen. No one wants to see anything like this happen in the city of New Orleans. And I'll tell you, just watching the videos that viewers are sending me right now, we cannot even show you some of these videos because they are horrific. To see anyone lying on the ground like that, this is not something that the city of New Orleans wants, and they have been preparing for months to make sure something like this doesn't happen, especially having more than 300 officers here last night covering this area. And so I know there's a lot of heavy hearts right now, and my prayers are going out to everyone who was impacted by this, because watching some of those videos, I'm sure this was probably one of the worst nights for some people. And so we're going to continue to keep on asking questions and try to get more information. 2 officers are in the hospital right now. They do not have any life-threatening injuries right now. So that's what we know so far. But reporting here from Bourbon and Canal Street, I'm Cassie Sherm. Back to you.
All right, Cassie, this is a very...
Our local coverage there from our NBC station, WDSU. Let me bring back in our NBC News national security correspondent, Tom Winter, who's joining us now on the phone. And Tom, as this search for answers continues in New Orleans after this horrific scene, we now know from a federal law enforcement official that the suspect here, the driver, is believed to be dead. Any other details on that so far?
That's right, Hallie. That's the latest from our colleague, Ken Delanian, hearing that from a senior federal law enforcement official, and starting to get some images that we're in the process of verifying from the scene, but it appears to be a white pickup truck. There's a number of bullet holes on it, and trying to corroborate some additional information that we see from that vehicle and what that can tell us. A law enforcement official who's not actively involved in this, but just obviously this has gotten the attention of law enforcement officials across the East Coast here this morning, pointed out that there was a bollard replacement. So those are the stainless steel drums, if you will, that are typically line these streets and typically line these areas as a security measure to make sure vehicles aren't able to go down these streets. Now, whether or not that was just to protect the sidewalk or whether or not that was to protect the street, that was something that was in the process of being done. Also, where was this on the street? Was it at the very beginning, and did this individual carry out this apparent attack because they were able to just get close enough to the security area to be able to create damage as people would be close to the entrance of the street, or were they actually able to get a distance down the street? Those are all questions that we have here this morning, Hallie, and don't frankly yet, because it's still very much early in this investigation, have the answers to. But there are a number of different components that they're looking at. If this individual is deceased, if they had any ID on them, of course they'll be able to immediately go to work, and since they have a license plate on a vehicle, they'll be able to determine whether or not this vehicle was rented, was it a vehicle that this person owned, and all sorts of information off of that.
Do we know yet, Tom, if they have an identification on this driver?
I have not been, no identification has been shared with me. That doesn't mean that they don't have one. It's just that I haven't heard that they have one at this stage. Presumably on the ground, this individual is deceased. They would be able to, the FBI has if not, the FBI has the ability to run those fingerprints. So now that doesn't necessarily mean that this individual is in their system, but if they have any sort of a record or any sort of background where they would have been fingerprinted in the past, that can be very helpful. They can do that very quickly. The FBI has that ability, and then obviously the fact that they have a vehicle, you have a piece of evidence, and if the vehicle was rented to John Doe, and that John Doe photo that matches the person that they have deceased at the scene, then they'll be able to have that type of information. So there's all sorts of different means and methods that they can use to be able to try to determine that identification. That's probably already happened.
And presumably, Tom, the gun that this driver used to shoot at police officers is also a critical piece of evidence here that could potentially be used to track his identity, to figure out where he got this gun from, et cetera.
Huge. Where did he get the gun? Who sold it to him? Was it purchased lawfully? Was it not? If so, is there more information there? And the potential other individuals that they could be looking at in the course of this investigation? You know, this stuff, at this stage, it's over. The suspect is deceased, unfortunately. So are 10 individuals who are trying to enjoy their New Year's Eve celebrations, and 2 cops are lying in a hospital. But there is a bit of a different component to this, Hallie, because as you and I alluded to earlier, there is a major, the Sugar Bowl is in New Orleans tonight, a major national event at the Superdome. So you want to be very, very clear and very certain right away whether or not you have a potential problem here that could expand beyond this. And so I'm guessing that there is a pace and a tempo to this that'll be even faster than usual, just to try to get to the bottom of who this person is and what their background is.
Tom Winter, I'm going to let you hop on the phone. I know you have calls to make to your sources as well as they continue to investigate what has happened in New Orleans just after 3 o'clock this morning, as crowds of people had been celebrating New Year's Eve on Bourbon Street in the famous French Quarter of that city. At least 10 people killed after a driver plowed his pickup truck intentionally, according to police, into that celebration. We want to take you back now to our local coverage of WDSU, our local NBC news station, continuing to follow this. And I should let you know we are expecting another update from law enforcement that we will bring you in just a couple of hours. Let's take you back now to New Orleans Live.
A state trooper with Louisiana State Police saw a suspicious package. He called it in, and they are now investigating what they believe could be an IED. And the RV that you see with the flashing lights just arrived. That is a command center type setup that they have set up here right in front of Tropical Isle Bar on the corner of Bourbon and Orleans here in the heart of the French Quarter, as they investigate, like you said, an IED that the suspect could have brought with him when he came in here to the French Quarter on New Year's Eve around thousands of people to harm people in our city. So again, this is a situation I don't think any of us have ever seen. What's unfolding in real time, what the mayor and the police chief and our reporters and you have been laying out here. But again, a massive police presence in the French Quarter, not only NOPD and state police, wildlife and fisheries agents are here, and everywhere is blocked off. So if you had any intention of driving into the French Quarter today for any reason whatsoever, you are going to be diverted because there is nowhere to go. And what you're looking at right now, again, a serious situation. Like the FBI said, they are investigating a suspicious package because they believe that the suspect did have some explosive devices that he brought to the French Quarter in the pickup truck that Superintendent Kirkpatrick said he used to plow down Bourbon Street earlier today. So we'll continue to follow the situation here as they have brought in specialists to investigate what is a suspicious package, and more police presence continues to come to this scene.
And look, Fletcher, we're going to get to Brittany in a second, and Mike Kahn. We're looking live right now, just so you know, from being at these scenes. what you're zoomed into right there, that white truck, that is special operations. That would indicate the bomb squad for NOPD. You were just zoomed in. It's that big white truck. It has the crest on the front with the red and blue light. That would indicate that the NOPD's bomb squad is out there, as you have been reporting.
Yeah, again, Travers, that command center did just arrive moments ago. That's why we asked for you all to come out to us. You see the St. Louis Cathedral in the background. And again, just for perspective, that is the corner of Bourbon and Orleans, right by the Tropical Isle Bar, which is a huge destination for New Year's Eve, for Mardi Gras, one of the go-to places, if you will, for people here, tourists and locals, to go in the big events, the heart of the French Quarter. So again, we'll continue to see what unfolds here as the investigation ramps up.
Yeah, the big question everybody has right now is, why was New Orleans and the French Quarter a target for this person? Keep us updated. Also, stay safe, because when you're talking about IEDs like this, we are not in a war zone. We are in a major American city right now. So give us the very latest information. We're going to get to Brittany Werner and then to Mike Kahn to react to this. Before we do, we are going to show you some video that's coming into the newsroom. And over the next several days and weeks, you will see a lot of video, as there are so many cameras on Bourbon Street. This is video that is very graphic. We have blurred a lot of it. It is the immediate aftermath that you are about to see after this attack happened, when somebody drove a truck down Bourbon Street. You can see there are people who are suffering on the ground right there, being attended to by first responders, police, probably everyday citizens who witnessed it and are trying to help out. Everything happening just after 3:15 a.m. If you know New Orleans and you know Bourbon Street, it was absolutely packed, more than likely, at 3:15. We are a city that does not close at 2 o'clock like most other cities. The bars here and the partying go on all night, well into the early morning hours. So at 3:15, more than likely, it was probably prime time, and there were probably tens of thousands of people on Bourbon Street. Let's go live to Brittany Werner. She is also on the scene right now. Brittany, the mayor called this, we go back to this, an act of
You've been listening to WDSU, our NBC News station in New Orleans, after that truck ramming in that city on New Year's Eve, just after 3 o'clock this morning. I want to come back here to Washington to Gabe Gutierrez, because, Gabe, we understand now just moments ago that President Biden has been briefed on what happened.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. President Biden has been briefed just a short time ago. The president waking up this morning in Wilmington, Delaware, after a last night, but we're just hearing from the White House that he was briefed early on this morning. Certainly it's still very early on in this investigation, but the White House has already been in contact with the mayor's office in New Orleans, and the White House reiterates that the FBI is already on the ground, and President Biden will continue to be briefed throughout the day. Certainly there are a lot of outstanding questions at this point, Hallie, a motive as local investigators and also the FBI looking into the motive behind this attack, the president keeping watch on it, as well as the National Security Council. Hallie?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you very much. There in West Palm Beach, of course, covering the transition with President-elect Trump. We will see if he has anything to say this morning as well. I want to go now to somebody who was there. I believe we have an eyewitness on the phone on Bourbon Street when this happened. Jimmy Cothran. Jimmy, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you doing?
Blessed, but I've been better.
I bet. Can you walk us through where you were this morning and describe what you saw?
We were kind of finishing out the night, coming from Bourbon towards Canal, and there was a lot of commotion at the end, so we ducked off into a nightclub for a moment to let all that settle, what we thought was settling, and then within a couple of minutes of walking in, a group of frantic females run inside, push past security, and hide under tables. And so when we seen that, we live here, and unfortunately, our first thoughts were somebody shooting or chasing them. So we knew the club we were at, we ran upstairs. We knew they had a balcony. Whenever we got to the balcony, it is not what we expected. It was the beginning of the mass casualties. Dead right in front of us was someone's mother, twisted obviously deceased. We counted 8 just from a couple of seconds of standing there, 8 bodies. 2 looked to be at least alive. I wouldn't say survivable, but alive. And the other 4 were clearly, very clearly, graphically deceased.
That is
and
a gut punch to hear.
No one was around. Like after they were mowed over, not knowing anything. Like no one was helping these people. They wouldn't let us out. I have training personally, and they just immediately locked us in there. And we could see some people did eventually go and start attending to the bodies. One man, deceased, had tire tracks across his back, and then when someone turned him over, he had tire tracks across his stomach, and he was clearly crushed. The mother that was in front of us, she was just horribly disfigured. A little girl that we had seen dancing as we were walking up the street was as flat as a pillow. I mean, it just kept going. Like every eye shot, body.
It's difficult to hear. I'm sure it was far worse to witness and to experience.
It was unbelievable. It was only could be referenced to a movie. The way.
Did you see the pickup truck, Jimmy? Did you hear the gunshots that were apparently fired after this happened, or had you been in the nightclub at the time that this happened?
The gunshots is what we thought was the commotion up the street.
I see.
But it was so loud where we were kind of like in the thick of it. And then the truck, we heard the truck barrel by as more people piled in. And as soon as we got up to the balcony, he had already advanced 8 to 10 blocks. And that's what I was trying to tell the other people is there were no barricades. Like this barricade stuff they're saying is not true.
Were there any barricades at any part of Bourbon Street when you came into the French Quarter?
Yes, we have tank barricades, like the metal, hydraulic raising, unrammable barricades, because this has happened so many times. When we got there, me and my friend were surprised that they hadn't put these up, because usually you can walk safely in the middle of Bourbon once you hit Bourbon. They weren't up. So you still kind of had to watch your back for cars, but this is at 8 p.m. So now we're at 3:15, 3:10 a.m. They never put the barricades up. This man was able to hit 70 miles an hour for a clean 8 to 10 blocks down Bourbon. And we had barricades.
You say 8 to 10 blocks, Jimmy, during the time when you were in the club. How long did it take him to go, let's say, those 8 blocks, would you say? How many seconds?
A minute, 2 minutes tops. He was out of sight. Police were on foot when we got to the balcony with M16s hustling down the street. They didn't even have time to get in their vehicles yet and chase him. They were on foot chasing him. He was long gone. And the only thing that stopped him is when he wrecked out. And that was clean.
Yeah.
And y'all will figure out the coverage of where the carnage started and where he wrecked out, and that'll show you exactly how far he got, and that there were no barricades on Bourbon up.
When you walked out of that club, Jimmy, go ahead, please.
They had the flimsy triangle-style orange and white barricade. That's what they had.
I think you're referencing maybe what we're looking at here on screen, some of those barricades, similar to those perhaps. Jimmy, this is a city. Yeah, that it has been through agony. It has been through hell this morning. When you walked out of that club, did you go home? Where are you now? What did you see? And how were people doing around you that were witnessing this as well?
Well, I mean, I'm at home now, but we were held prisoner with those sights and carnage and memory inside that club for over an hour and a half with no one telling us anything, which I understand you got to cordon off the crime scene. But even when they let us out, they never told us anything while we were in there. Like, a lot of us knew what happened, but some didn't. But even when they came in and told us to leave, they just started grabbing us. The police just started grabbing us by our clothes, throwing us out. And if you've seen my Facebook video, you can hear them in the background just throwing us, literally physically grabbing hold of us and yanking us out the door. Doesn't matter who we were with, because it's my buddy that went with me. I think he went to the restroom. So when they said get out, they didn't care who you were waiting on. They wanted you out now. And if you didn't, they told you you were resisting. They yanked us out. So me and him got separated. They put their hands on him, yanked him out because he's looking for me. And just the way they treated us after that. And the bodies are still there. They're just covered up with pink sheets. And you can see that in the video. So they walk us out past all these bodies again, treat us like crap, and say, have a nice night.
Unimaginable horror in New Orleans this morning. Jimmy Cothran, we are so grateful to you for sharing what you saw, for helping to fill in some of the details, some of the questions that so many people around the country have as they are watching the aftermath of this unfold. A lot of people are thinking about you and your city. Jimmy, thank you very much for being with us this morning. As you heard there, of course. Jimmy Cothran, local of New Orleans. We understand from New Orleans police that a majority of those injured and killed were local residents. You have a lot of people in from out of town, considering the Sugar Bowl, that huge college football playoff game, is tonight in the city. It is at the Superdome, just about a mile away from the French Quarter. All of it is police, as you see in the images here, are continuing the investigation into what happened this morning when a man driving a pickup truck plowed into crowds of people, as you just heard from Jimmy, celebrating New Year's Eve. At least 10 people have been killed. 2 police officers are among the 30+ people who are in the hospital now. Those officers are in stable condition after being fired on by the driver, according to police. I want to bring in now NBC's Emily Aketa, who's following all of this from a different New Year's Eve celebration in Times Square. Emily, good morning.
Hey there, Hallie. Good to be with you. The police superintendent of New Orleans calling this very tragic, as you said, that resulted in 10 people being killed, several dozen others transported to area hospitals. She also called it very intentional. This happened around 3:15 in the morning on the very popular tourist hotspot of Bourbon Street. She said a man in a pickup truck intentionally drove around barricades, so it's not clear what kind of barricades those were, and then went at a very fast pace down Bourbon Street, quote, trying to run over as many people as he possibly could. He eventually crashed, and police say started shooting at officers, striking 2 officers who we've learned are in stable condition. A federal law enforcement official tells NBC News that the suspect is believed to be dead at this time. They also say that the FBI is looking into this, investigating this as a potential terrorist event. The FBI is taking over the investigation and revealed that they found several improvised explosive devices near the area. Our affiliate capturing images of robotics being deployed in that area. The governor of Louisiana posting on social media saying a horrific act of violence took place on Bourbon Street earlier this morning, then urging all near the scene to avoid Bourbon Street and that tourist hotspot. And also in town, tens of thousands of people for the Sugar Bowl expected to play out later today, though the police noting they believe most of the people impacted by this horrific event are actually locals. We've learned the White House has been briefed on this tragedy. Still at this point, though, a number of unanswered questions. It's unclear what any possible motive was involved here. Also, we don't have the suspect's identity. We expect to get more information at a news conference in a few hours, Hallie.
Emily Aketa live for us on that. That news conference set to begin just around 11 a.m. Eastern time. We will, of course, bring you those updates as we get them. I want to go now to our NBC News Justice correspondent Ken Delanian, who's been working his sources. Ken, what else are we learning this morning?
Hallie, I've now confirmed with 2 federal law enforcement officials that the suspect is dead. Unclear the circumstances of that, whether he was shot by police or committed suicide, but the suspect is dead at the scene. That was left unclear in the morning news briefing by the police and the FBI, although the police chief did say that this person set out to kill as many people as he could and called this an act of carnage and said it was a terrorist act. The FBI official who spoke appeared to contradict her and say it wasn't a terrorist incident. I am told by a federal law enforcement official that the FBI is investigating this as potential terrorism. Obviously, they need to run down a motive here, but in the common definition, this was clearly an act meant to kill a lot of people and to terrorize people. But again, the FBI taking the lead on this investigation, trying to run down the motive, but the suspect is believed to be dead.
And obviously, identifying the suspect, once law enforcement does that, Ken, is going to be critical to assessing and determining the motive here.
That's exactly right. And undoubtedly, they know a lot more than they're saying to us at this moment about the identity. They're running that down. And you know how this works. Unfortunately, this has become all too familiar to us. They will scour the digital atmosphere for any kind of social media profile of this person. They will begin profiling this person and try to figure out what their ideology was, where they are coming from. But clearly, this was a chilling and intentional act, and they're investigating it as potential terrorism.
Ken Delaney, and thank you. I'll let you get back to your phone calls that I know you'll be making. Let me bring in Rob D'Amico now, former FBI agent who worked in counterterrorism. Rob, we know that the FBI is on scene. We heard from the assistant special agent in charge. In addition to the investigation into the truck ramming, into the shots fired by the suspect, who, as Ken just reported, is believed to be dead, there is also now this investigation into what's being called an improvised explosive device, some sort of potentially homemade bomb that could be connected to this as well, right?
Absolutely. We've seen some of these before. Even in school shootings, they've left IEDs in their house, knowing the police were going to go search the house. So they're going to find out who this person was. And they're also, for the search warrant of the house, wherever he lived, they're also going to have bomb squads there because he's shown that he's capable of making something at least looks like an IED. So they're going to render that safe. They'll look for evidence on that IED. Lots of times bomb makers make it with bare hands and they leave fingerprints on the tape and other things they use for that. I think they're going to try to run that against the victim, the subject, to make sure only his fingerprints are on that device so that they can start ruling out if there's other people involved. But I think that's a priority right now. Since this event is over and the person is deceased, making sure that this is not some type of event that he had helpers or someone else was involved with, especially with the Sugar Bowl being down there. I think the priority now is to beef up security for this Sugar Bowl. They won't be able to definitively say that he wasn't helped by the time the Sugar Bowl and the people start going there. So they're going to have to assume that either it could be something else or that it could be a copycat thing. But the Sugar Bowl is hopefully going to be a lot harder for vehicles to get in. And your eyewitness talking about the barricades was very enlightening in the fact that we see those slanted barricades when the police chief said that the subject got around the barricades. You know, we all thinking about big barricades, cement or trucks, something that can actually block a vehicle. Those barricades there are really not barricades. They just prevent someone from turning accidentally and going down the street, but not someone with a pickup truck who has intention to kill people. So I think it's a bit deceiving when they say he got around barricades. Those aren't barricades. Those are just traffic blockers.
Of course, some questions, too, about what barricades might have been in place. We expect to hear more from police on that. Rob, when you listen to that eyewitness, he talked about the truck traveling. He said 70 miles an hour. It's hard to tell, of course, speeds when you're stationary on the ground, but moving very, very quickly, very fast, something like 8 to 10 blocks. What does that tell you about this driver and about this incident?
Well, when you look at it, again, a vehicle is a deadly weapon, and it is so... I don't want to say effective, but it is. I mean, when you take a pickup truck and you get it up to speed, it's very hard to stop. And that's why most protection for big events like this where there's crowds, you make them like a serpentine, like over in Iraq and Afghanistan to prevent cars from getting into bases. They had to go around in a serpentine so that those vehicles couldn't get up to speed. Because once they get up to speed, even like say if you had two police cruisers blocking a street, a truck that gets up to 50, 60 miles an hour most likely will make it through those if they're just blocking the street the wrong way. So again, everything is to keep the speed of a vehicle like that down in order not to be able to do this damage and to be stopped quicker. So even if he got through certain barricades and then got up to speed where the people were, it is so dangerous to have a vehicle like that, and especially a pickup truck. It's heavy, it has lots of power, and it's a lot harder to stop. And the carnage he was talking about, we've seen overseas in incidents like this, and it's just horrifying to see. And I don't think the police, when they let him out, he talked about having to walk by the carnage and the scene. That's going to be horrifying on a whole lot of people that survived this even.
Traumatic for so many people in New Orleans. Rob D'Amico, thank you very much for being with us. As you are taking a look now on your screen of some of the images we are just getting in of the aftermath of this truck ramming in New Orleans, you can see a heavy law enforcement response. We were showing you just a moment ago some of the live pictures that we're getting from our local NBC news station, WDSU in New Orleans. We're going to take you back now to their live coverage and listen in for just a moment.
Right now, a mass carnage event, what the mayor is calling a terror attack in the city of New Orleans. Just after 3:15 a.m., a truck went around the barricades or bollards. We don't know how that happened, as Bourbon Street is not drivable. It is not known if the bollards were up or if barricades were up, but 10 people have been killed on Bourbon Street, more than 30 taken to area hospitals. The suspect, who was not identified, has been killed, believed to have been shot and killed after wrecking the vehicle in question on Bourbon Street right in the 100 block, and then getting into what is believed to be a gunfight with NOPD officers. 2 officers shot and injured. They are said to be in stable condition. You can see our crews all across New Orleans. Before we get to them, let's go back to Mike Kahn. Mike, we have been reporting for the last hour that the suspect is dead. FBI working to identify that person right now, and any possible motive as to why this, why New Orleans, why on New Year's Day. All right, we're going to come right back to Mike Kahn. Before we get to Mike Kahn, let's get to Aubrey Killian. He is live at UMC, the only level 1 trauma center. That is where a lot of these people, including the 2 NOPD officers, have been brought. Aubrey.
Hey, Travis, we are live from UMC. I'm going to go straight on to the ER ramp. It does appear that at our vantage point, we did see Mayor Cantrell at one point. She was here to comment.
All right, Aubrey, we're having an issue with your microphone. As soon as you get that squared away, we are going to come back to you. Let's get to Cassie Sherm. She's on Canal Street. There's talk about multiple IEDs. Fletcher saw one. It's a big police presence in the French Quarter right now. You saw NOPD officers kind of sweeping the area, cars, garbage cans, trash bins, looking for anything suspicious. Cassie, are you seeing the same thing where you are on Canal Street?
Yeah, I'm actually seeing that exact same thing going down Bourbon. So obviously we're on Canal and Bourbon right now to give you guys a little bit idea. Right across the way here, you guys can see right back there, that is where it all started. And you're seeing officers going through, looking underneath things. We saw people going through trash cans as well. We are seeing more looking in that area. I think that means that they're kind of just making their way through to see if it's safe to go through, because the fact that there are still bodies there on Canal Street as we speak, I think that they're just trying to do their due diligence before everyone starts making their way to start cleaning the scene as they're still investigating. Now, I do want to say it was very interesting. I actually just talked to a man who was staying right across the street here at one of the hotels. He was actually on Bourbon Street around 2 o'clock this morning, right before all this went down, and he was just, shocked that something like this happened, because he said there were so many police around in this area. Now, one thing that he did say, though, that was very interesting is he said, so we have this like cement bollard type thing that's basically stops people from driving on Bourbon from Canal Street. He said that that was not up. He said what was up was barricades, and I'm going to show you what the barricades, he said, looked like. It's those little basically orange and white striped barricades. He said there was barricades, there was mounted horses as well, and patrol, and he said a lot of police officers, but he said he did not see that metal bollard up during that time frame. And so that's something that we definitely are going to have to asked some questions about of whether that was up or not. Now, sometimes they do take it down later on when it starts getting quieter, especially when it's going to be time to clean the streets and stuff like that. But very, very interesting to learn that. Now, he said he was really fortunate because they left to go get pizza, and then that's when that incident happened, and so kind of got to be able to stay away from that situation. But yeah, we're going to continue to look into this. Reporting here from Canal and Bourbon Street, I'm Cassie Sherm. Back to you.
When the FBI eventually starts to sort things out, the big question will be who this person is and why they did something like this in the city of New Orleans. Let's go back live to Fletcher Mackel. Obviously, the mayor called this a terrorist attack. Fletcher, I think we know what she means when she means an act of domestic terrorism where somebody intentionally tries to cause harm in a mass casualty type event. You just heard an explosion in the French Quarter, and we saw that video live. It's not video, it was actually live television of police officers walking down the street looking for what appeared to be suspicious packages or devices, and it looks like they're continuing. Let me put my glasses on. It looks like they're continuing to do that.
Yeah, Trevor, so we just had a second explosion here in the French Quarter. They screamed fire in the hole a second time, and they detonated what sounded like another type of explosive device. You see some people from Special Operations and the bomb squad working right down the street. I think photojournalist Stefan Cage has zoomed in on them right now. So, again, just to kind of set the scene here, the FBI alluded to the fact that there was an IED type device that they were investigating because they feel like the suspect may have had that when he came into the French Quarter to do the harm that he did. A state police trooper called in a suspicious device. We were cleared off of Bourbon Street. We're on Dauphine right now in Orleans. About 5 minutes ago, we heard the bomb squad scream, fire in the hole, and we heard what sounded like a firecracker going off. And just about 30 seconds ago, or about 30 seconds before you came to me, we heard it again. Another fire in the hole and another detonation, which sounded like a firecracker going off. These aren't huge detonations. Some of the residents that live here are actually out watching right now, following what's going on. There were people on the balconies earlier, but again, because of this investigation leading to potential IEDs in the French Quarter, we have seen police doing massive sweeps here with the gloves, searching trash cans, searching under cars, everywhere here in the French Quarter. Teams of police officers, we showed you that live on TV, coming through looking for suspicious packages or anything out of the ordinary. They seem to have found one right on the corner of Bourbon in Orleans, right by the Tropical Isle Bar, which is a huge landmark for people wanting to party during Mardi Gras, New Year's Eve, other events in the French Quarter. But again, we have heard 2 small detonations from the Special Operations RV that came onto the scene down the street that you're looking at right now, and we'll continue to follow and monitor the situation here.
Yeah, Fletcher, keep us posted because obviously there are multiple scenes here. The one on Bourbon Street where 10 people have been tragically killed at the hospitals, several local hospitals, UMC, Baptist, Touro, more than 30 people taken to area hospitals. And we should point out, this is one of the biggest celebrations and the biggest days in New Orleans. We are a tourism city. The French Quarter is a tourism mecca. Bourbon Street at 3:15 a.m. was more than likely packed wall to wall with people, not just people coming to celebrate New Year's Eve in New Orleans, but also with the Sugar Bowl, which kicks off in just about 13 hours. Georgia and Notre Dame had large fan bases in the city. When it comes to those killed and injured, the police superintendent, Ann Kirkpatrick, about 90 minutes ago telling us they do know the demographic. They believe a lot of the people were local, but they can't confirm that with everybody. Let's go to Brittany Werner. She is at a different location near Royal Street. Brittany, what are you seeing? As we should point out, the French Quarter basically completely shut down right now.
Yeah, Travers, we moved our location to Royal and Bienville Street, and right now we're seeing much of what we saw in Canal. Lots of police officers and detectives over here investigating because that 8-block circumference is blocked off while this investigation continues. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see. I'm going to have our photojournalist Matt zoom in a little bit more so you can kind of see detectives are on Bourbon Street. Now, this was a crazy situation. Many people not expecting to start their new year off with this type of tragedy. tragic situation. We know that, again, the FBI is now taking over this investigation as the lead concerning what happened here. Fletcher just mentioned that they heard 2 potential devices be detonated from where he's standing from that vantage point. Obviously, scary situation. We were told that one of the hotels over here was actually being evacuated. The tenants were being taken out. We haven't been able to confirm that, but we do see a lot of people starting to move around this morning. I actually spoke with a couple who witnessed that attack happen right before their eyes. They said if they had crossed the street a few moments sooner, they too would have been injured in this attack. But they watched that car plow into a crowd of people. They heard the screams and they saw the aftermath and saw the actual event happen. So scary situation for everyone involved, everyone who witnessed this, all of the people who were impacted by losing loved ones or having loved ones be injured in this attack. We know that city leaders this morning during their event said that there were about 300 officers working at the time this happened in the French Quarter. So obviously a large presence that was out in the French Quarter on this busy night. We expected to have a lot of people. There was a lot of traffic on Canal and Bourbon because obviously it's always traffic at that time of night, but it was New Year's Eve and going into New Year's Day. So obviously lots of people who were out bumper to bumper. So the couple that I spoke with who witnessed this says they don't even know how the man had that much speed to make it through those other cars because cars were bumper to bumper last night as, you know, all of the festivities were happening. People said that, you know, they were having fun and it quickly turned somber after this event happened. So right now, you know, we've confirmed 10 people dead following this incident, around 30 people or more hospitalized at area hospitals all around. Again, the FBI now investigating, and there were explosive devices that were found. So they were working to see if those were active. And Fletcher mentioned that, you know, they heard a small explosion when possible 2 of those explosive devices were detonated. So, you know, this is unfolding, getting a lot deeper as we learn more about what's happening here. But we're supposed to get an update from city leaders once again at 11 this morning to kind of iron out more of those questions that we have. You know, we're told that the suspect in this situation is dead now. We have that confirmed. So still a lot of unanswered questions here. A lot of people worried and concerned considering what happened. But for now, we're going to send it back to you in the studio. Travers.
All right, Brittany, thank you very much. We're going to get to Anam Siddiqui in just a moment. She's now at the Jack's Brewery, which is becoming another site right now. Obviously, so much going on in the French Quarter after what the mayor is calling a terrorist attack. Somebody driving a vehicle down Bourbon Street, going around the bollards some kind of way, or at least a barricade if the bollards weren't up, killing 10 people, injuring 30 plus. The mayor spoke about 90 minutes ago, giving an update to everybody as the world is watching this right now. This is probably the biggest story across America, if not the world right now. This attack on the United States in the city of New Orleans, just about 3:15 a.m. Let's take a listen to what Mayor LaToya Cantrell had to say about this when she spoke to the media.
We do know that the city of New Orleans was impacted by a terrorist attack. It's all still under investigation. You'll hear more after me. However, I have been in direct contact with the White House, with Governor Landry, and of course a unified command who is present here. What I'm asking at this time are prayers for those who have lost their lives in the city of New Orleans due to this tragedy. In addition to that, I'm asking the public to stay clear of 8 blocks around Bourbon Street. Stay clear from Bourbon Street, 8 blocks around. Very active, and again, a unified command is in place right now. I'm going to ask Chief Kirkpatrick to give you an update. You're then going to hear from our agent in charge.
And as you heard the mayor just say, the White House has been briefed. President Joe Biden is in Wilmington, Delaware. He is heading to Camp David. He is in constant contact, it's our understanding, with the FBI and with the mayor, and will be briefed later today. Let's go back to Mike Kahn. Mike, when you see situations like this, because everybody wants to know who the person is, why did this happen, why did he target New Orleans, those are answers that we may not get for several days, I take it.
Well, I think you'll find out who the person is today. I think you'll find that part out today. I think you'll find out, are there potentially other people involved in this? Or is it just one person who's involved in this entire scenario? And then what we have to look at is, what are these other IEDs that are going off? What are the other ones being disrupted? Are these situations where you're taking these devices, you're running them through an X-ray, you see wires, they go ahead and use a disruptor, which is like a shotgun shell. They disrupt the device, and then they're finding more in different places. With the game going on, how do you protect against that with all these people going to the game from all different locations? What do you do about people who are pre-gaming with ice chests, with other bags that look like that? Or is there anyone else involved in this? So there's still a lot to be considered. I think that's why your press conferences are so far off, that one, we're dealing with the immediate casualty and the people who are still, unfortunately, in the crime scene, and then going further and putting a plan together for acceptance of this game and how to get people in and out of the game safely.
Yeah, look, and when you talk about things like this, there are so many hotels in the French Quarter. We have about 30,000 hotel rooms in this city. If I read correctly on a story that we did, and I believe it is correct, obviously, they are about 85% occupancy right now. There are so many people who are at hotels. I'm going to use a hotel, for example, the Royal Sonesta. It's in the 300 block of Bourbon Street. They have the Bourbon Orleans right there. They have so many boutique hotels. Is there a shelter in place? Are they telling people to, hey, stick around your hotel lobby right now, because so many people are downtown in the Quarter, waking up right now at 8 a.m. and learning about this attack? All right, we're going to get back to Mike Kahn in a second, but if you are waking up at 8 a.m. with us, we are covering major breaking news, a mass carnage event in the city of New Orleans, what the mayor is describing as a terror attack. Someone just after 3:15 a.m. drove a white pickup truck down Bourbon Street, somehow getting around either the bollards in place or the barricade. The mayor tells us they were intentionally trying to cause carnage, either hurt or kill people, and they did just that. 10 people have been killed, more than 30 sent to area hospitals. The driver, who is not being identified, then wrecked that vehicle on Bourbon Street, right near Iberville and Bourbon Street in the 100 block. To give you landmarks, not far from Redfish Grill or the Crystal Burger, that is right there off Canal. They exchanged gunfire with the NOPD. It is believed that the suspect was shot and killed. 2 NOPD officers shot and injured. They are at UMC, that is University Medical Center, where they are said to be in stable condition. We are going to get back to Mike Kahn.
We are on the air with an NBC News special report as you have been watching our local station, WDSU in New Orleans. It is 9 o'clock now on the East Coast, 8 a.m. in New Orleans, where at least 10 people have been killed after a man driving a truck intentionally plowed into a crowd celebrating New Year's on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. Police say he then opened fire, shooting 2 officers who are now in stable condition. In all, more than 30 people are being treated at local hospitals. 2 federal law enforcement sources tell NBC News the driver, the suspect, is dead, as police also investigate an improvised explosive device that was found in the area as well. This horrific attack, as the city's police chief said, this person was hell-bent on carnage, is happening just hours before the Sugar Bowl is set to kick off in New Orleans, drawing college football fans from Georgia, from Notre Dame to the Superdome, just about a mile away from Bourbon Street, where this attack happened. I want to bring in now our NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter, who's been working his sources. He joins us now on the phone. Tom, what else are we learning?
Hallie, at this time, they're obviously investigating the motive. It is possible that something was found either on the vehicle that has helped them get to the point where they're starting to circle this. The fact the FBI has taken over the investigation is a clearest indication that they have developed some motive information, because otherwise this would be investigated as a local homicide, and obviously at least 10 homicides at this point. When the FBI gets involved, traditionally and typically, that's an indication that there's a violation obviously, of federal law. And so the federal law violation here would have to do with potentially motive. And so that's the reason why I think you heard the mayor reference the idea of terrorism. The assistant special agent in charge who spoke at the press conference wouldn't go that far. But clearly the FBI standard as far as calling it that and what the direction of the investigation are two different things. So they're going to want to make sure from a federal perspective that they have the motive locked in and concrete, that just because somebody had something on their person doesn't necessarily mean that that ultimately was what the motive was. But I do think that they're coming towards a path where they're at least suspecting the idea of terrorism, and that's apparently a little bit as far as where the investigation is going. What will ultimately be determined, well, we'll find that out over time as they obviously uncover more evidence and do more work. As our colleague Ken Delanian has been reporting, to senior U.S. law enforcement officials to NBC News, saying that the suspect, the person who drove what is now being described to us as a pickup truck, that individual is deceased. And we have some unconfirmed photos from the scene, which, if are in fact accurate, indicate a vehicle with significant damage. A pickup truck appears to be late model, and we're still waiting on getting some more information on that. So obviously a lot of details that are out there. The truck, if those photos are confirmed, Hallie, has a license plate. That could be helpful. If it was a rental, they might know who rented it. If it was a car that belonged to a person, they would know that. If it's stolen, that's even helpful information. So clearly they're going to be able to develop a lot. Clearly they've probably already developed a lot, and a lot of that is ahead of where we are in our reporting, as you would understand, and that would make sense. But either way, there's a tragedy that has occurred here. As you know, Hallie, we've spoken about these incidents far too often. Typically, I say, okay, this is the part where it'll slow down. They'll take their time. They'll uncover things. But I think here, Hallie, given the fact we have a Sugar Bowl that is going to be happening in New Orleans tonight, there will certainly be an effort here to push this investigation at a much faster pace to make sure that they're not looking at any other potential incidents for later today or later this evening.
Tom Winter, thank you very much. I'd like you to stay close if you can, as we expect to get more updates throughout the morning and throughout the day from New Orleans. I want to show you now, as we are getting more video in from the immediate aftermath of this scene, what we are just now learning, what we're just now seeing. And I want you to listen, because in this short clip we're about to play you, you can hear what sounds like gunshots fired. Watch. So no audio on that clip, but you can see the images here. Just a gut punch to look at this in the French Quarter, Bourbon Street, perhaps one of the most famous streets in America. A huge New Year's Eve celebration, and just about 3:15 this morning, an eyewitness tells NBC News he saw this pickup truck going perhaps 8 to 10 blocks at a very fast clip down the street, describing the horrible aftermath in what has now turned into a tragedy to begin 2025 in Louisiana. For more, I want to bring in former Secret Service agent Evie Pompouras, former special agent. Evie, thank you for being here with us. You have heard now the updates from law enforcement. Talk about where this investigation goes from here. Clearly a focus on the driver, the suspect, and the motivation here.
First, they're going to make sure that for safety. When you do these investigations, the first thing is always safety. Yeah. The key thing is, did this person act alone? Were there other potential people that might have been tied to them, right? Is he a lone actor? Are there others? The other thing is improvised explosive devices. We're hearing that there are devices, or there's been a device. So that's another thing that they're going to check. Are there devices? Did this person leave devices elsewhere? Going to that person's home, seeing what's going on in that home, getting their devices, meaning getting their electronic devices, their computer, their phone, getting everything that they can to start looking through search history. Any type of reconnaissance done. What did this person do? Who did they talk to? That's the biggest thing, because you do have a major event coming up here in a couple hours in New Orleans. So they want to make sure that this person didn't plan anything else that's tied into something going on later. That's going to be the primary element first. Safety, safety, safety. Upon that, you're going to be also now looking for motive. Why did this person do it? Is this an individual who is going through something personally and has chosen to do this in this specific way? Or is this a person who's trying to portray some type of ideology, something that they feel passionate about, and that they want to send a message. You want to look at that. Did they communicate this? Often, as we see with these incidents, you have someone who wants the public to know. They want to be seen. They want their message out there. So did they communicate this with anybody? Did they post this on social media? The wonderful thing about technology today is that it's able to give so much more information to law enforcement than even doing interviews with other people. But they will do interviews, family members, friends, acquaintances, people at work. That's what they're going to be covering. I suspect they'll be releasing information in pieces. But, you know, again, you've got local police, you've got the locals doing their part, you've got FBI doing their part. There was a little bit of a conflict in where the mayor said that there was a terrorist attack. The FBI said it is not a terrorist attack. So there is we're waiting on clarity there to see if, in fact, it is or it isn't. So a lot of the stuff is unraveling as we speak. The other thing that they did mention during the press briefing is that they're ramping up police presence. They're getting help from the outside, which is a great idea, which is smart, because they're looking at, we've got other things going on, and we want everybody to feel safe in our city right now.
We are just, Evie, in the last 30 seconds or so, getting a statement in. You referenced the Sugar Bowl, that huge college football game that is set to kick off later on tonight in New Orleans. The chief executive officer of the Sugar Bowl says that the committee is devastated by the terrible events from early this morning. This is a new statement. You see it here on screen just into us, adding, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We are in ongoing discussions with authorities on the local, state, and federal levels, and will communicate further details as they become available." Again, the new statement from the Sugar Bowl Executive Committee. Evie, the security posture here would already be intense for any kind of huge game like this, where you have thousands of people coming in from out of town, in addition to the thousands of locals who are celebrating New Year's Eve in New Orleans. Talk us through changes that we may see to the security posture. You see it from that Sugar Bowl statement. We don't know the specifics yet, but this is an all-hands-on-deck effort.
I will tell you this, right? It's actually easier to secure a site like the Sugar Bowl than it is to secure a site like this. So I don't want to say I'm not as concerned. They're going to do their due diligence. They'll add more personnel if they need to, maybe close an entrance or two to funnel people through a specific entryway, maybe, be really alert in doing searches on people, putting them through magnetometers. So I think that they're going to do a good job, but it's easier to secure a site like that because it's enclosed, right? I have a perimeter around it. I've got a structure. I have my people, they go through security. I make sure they're clean. We use the term clean. Nothing's on them. They enter the facility. They've been checked. And I know everybody within my facility, within my structure is safe and clean. And I secure that perimeter. A site like this event, like where we saw this individual put their vehicle through, similar to what we saw, actually, this is coming off the heels of the event we saw in Germany. Christmas market in Germany. A driver takes his car and does the exact same thing, just drives through a crowd of people. Anytime you have an open venue like this, these are much harder to secure. You're looking at so many more variables. You don't have a structure around to help do the security on that. Often when we did presidential events and we really needed to harden up a site, we wouldn't use barricades. We would actually use trucks, sanitation trucks, buses, vehicles to create real barricades that people couldn't get through. Because what's interesting with this specific event, and similar to what happened in Germany, in both scenarios, the driver was able to get around the barricades that were set up by police. During the press conference, it was also said here, that we just heard, that they had barricades, but the person was very intent to cause harm. They were able to move around the barricades. I want to say this about barricades and police structures. Some are set up that are super hard, you can't get through. Some are set up to deter people. It means you deter people from doing bad acts. You deter people from trespassing or going through. It's a deterrent. The thing that we're seeing is when you have a true bad actor, someone like this who is keen on causing harm, they will get through it. So I think after this event, seeing that we've seen two back-to-back, one in Germany, one here, that there may be a little bit of shift in psyche and how we secure these events, making sure people now are truly safe. Because I have to tell you, one of the biggest concerns, and I said this after the Germany Christmas market attack, is copycats. copycats. And I really would want to know, I think it'll come out during the investigation, if that person was in any way, shape, or form inspired by what happened in Germany as well.
Evie Pompouras, thank you very much. Former Secret Service Special Agent. Evie, I'm going to ask you to stay close to your camera as well as we continue to get developments and as we expect updates on this throughout the morning. I want to bring in now NBC News Justice correspondent Ken Delanian, who's joining us live. Ken, we talk about these car and truck attacks. We saw the one in Germany that Evie referenced not too long ago, but there is a long history of these kinds of incidents.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. So just so people understand the context, that incident in Germany, December 20th, killed at least 5 people. They are still investigating the motive of this Saudi Arabian national who carried out that attack. There's some signs that he may have been mentally ill. They're not calling that specifically a terrorist-inspired attack, but there were a lot of repercussions from that because it harkened back to an attack in 2016 in Berlin that killed 12 people, where a person drove a truck into a Christmas market. And of course, in 2017 in Times Square, there was an ISIS-inspired attack by a man who drove a truck into a group of people, killing 7. So long history of that. But this is the first time that I'm aware of that combined a vehicle attack of this nature with gunfire. Police said the man fired shots and struck 2 New Orleans police officers, and potential bombs, potential improvised explosive devices that the FBI says they are investigating. It's not clear whether those were real bombs, but what is clear is, as the police said, that this person was bent on killing as many people as possible. And the FBI said during that news conference that they are taking the lead on this investigation. And my sources tell me they are investigating it as a potential terrorist attack. Obviously, the biggest question now is the identity of this suspect and any potential motive. Terrorism could have a lot of forms. It could be ISIS-inspired, obviously, or it could be domestic ideology-inspired, or it could be none of the above, and there could be a specific grievance involved here. But what's clear is that this was an intentional act. This person set out to create carnage, as the police chief put it. Hallie.
Yeah, carnage through a variety of means, not just from ramming his pickup truck through this crowd, but then opening fire, Ken, on those police officers. We know at least 2 of them have been shot. They're in the hospital in stable condition, among the 30-plus people who have been injured. And then there's this improvised explosive device. Some questions about where it was found, about whether or not it has been detonated. One of our local affiliate reporters from our station in New Orleans, WDSU, saying that he heard something like perhaps a noise, something like fire in the hole, for example, from down the street where police have been investigating. This is all part and parcel of where this inquiry goes from here.
That's right, Hallie. And when I heard that local report, he said it sounded like a firecracker. That sounded to me like police being very cautious, seeing a backpack or something they believed is suspicious and conducting a controlled detonation. Had that been a bomb, it would have been a much bigger explosion than just the sound of a firecracker. Again, unclear what's going on there, but clearly the police are scouring the area and being very careful because the FBI said that there was evidence of an improvised explosive device. And clearly, as you said, this person not only drove a truck into human beings gathered for a celebration, but then opened fire and shot 2 New Orleans police officers. So this person was bent on destruction. And you know, there's some really big open questions. For example, did this person act alone, or did he have any Confederates or co-conspirators? That's something the FBI is investigating right now. And until they can rule that out, they and the New Orleans police and every law enforcement agency in that vicinity has to be super careful, super vigilant, and investigate every possibility, including, you know, suspicious packages lying around the French Quarter. Hallie.
Ken Delanian, thank you very much. I want to go back to Evie Pompouras, that former Secret Service special agent. One of the things that has come up is this issue, and you referenced it, and Ken referenced it there, Evie, of these barricades. We spoke to an eyewitness not too long ago. We'll play back some of that interview in case people missed it as they're just waking up this morning, who described seeing this pickup truck go something like 8 to 10 blocks very quickly down the street, and saying that he did not see those bollards or barricades up. He saw what looked like smaller versions, perhaps more like traffic stops. It is not clear at this point. We do know that the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department said that this driver went around whatever barricades were in place. But this is something that police, that law enforcement have learned to put in place now for years. This is a typical part of the security posture and the security apparatus for any big event like a New Year's Eve celebration.
I think it depends. You know, as we're looking at the image there, a barricade honestly can be anything. It depends how they're using the term. But even as we're looking at that image right now, we see, you know, the white triangle with the half, you know, bar. Like, they could even consider that a barricade. There's bike rack, which is the metal bars that can be barricaded. You can have some bollards that could be considered barricade. When you do security planning, you're very deliberate in what kind of barricade you want to use and how much do you have access to. Is it bike rack? I'm suspecting again, because I don't know for sure, perhaps they use bike rack. You can easily dismantle that. The sure thing is cement barricades. Those can't be moved, but it's costly to put them in place and you need a lot of them. You can use vehicles. Vehicles are also great. It's something that we use. I do suspect moving forward, law enforcement is going to have to really rethink how they secure these events. I know we don't want to scare people. We want people to go enjoy themselves, but we also want to make sure that people feel safe. And I really think rethinking about how to want a secure event. Also, you know, I'm not trying to be morbid here, but these are things that I would think about in the security plan. This is a driver who drove through. It takes seconds to cause the carnage that they caused. Second, and in this scenario, he actually crashed his car, then exited. So imagine if he didn't crash his car, how much more carnage he could have caused before he exited. The other thing is, we don't know if he had or didn't have any explosive devices in the vehicle and they failed to go off. Or what if he did and they did go off? These are the things, you know, you want to think about, because it's not just, you know, the world is changing, sadly. People are adding more and more elements to this. You know, and as Ken Delaney was reporting before, using a vehicle is not a new thing. But what's changing is the intent, the nefariousness, the bad actors that they're looking at. I'm not just going to drive my vehicle and try to hit something or someone. I'm actually going to bring a weapon. I'm actually going to really do massive carnage. And we have to adapt. We have to change with the mentality of the bad actors that we are dealing with. And I do think that really shutting down the road. In fact, there was an earlier clip that was played of an individual saying, who was at the event that we were just playing here at NBC, where he was saying, there were vehicles going throughout the night. I was surprised to see vehicles passing through with all these people around.
Evie Pompouris, former Secret Service Special Agent. Evie, thank you. That interview, of course, coming from Jimmy Cothran, who lives in New Orleans, who was on Bourbon Street when this happened. I want to bring in now NBC's Morgan Radford. And Morgan, you and our team have been looking through a number of videos that are starting to come in of the scene, of the aftermath of what happened there in New Orleans just about 3:15 this morning.
That's exactly right, Hallie. We have been combing through the videos that are now circulating online. We've been reaching out to the sources and the witnesses who have filmed those videos. And to be clear, I want to show you the first shorter video. It's about 4 seconds where you hear these loud bangs in the street. Let's go ahead and play that video for you here on your screen. This is user-generated content, as we call it. You can hear what appears to be loud bangs. It appears to sound like gunshots, which is consistent with the information that we have been reporting. You see a blurred body there on the ground. You see some bystanders rushing to help, and then as soon as those loud bangs appear in the air, they run. And that's what you're seeing at the end of the video. And Hallie, I think it's important to take a moment for our viewers. When news breaks like this, things happen so quickly. And what we do, you know, to just sort of peel back the curtains, we have entire teams who comb through these videos, who reach out to sources that are directly on the ground, and then we verify them. We make sure that we are bringing you, our viewers, the best, most accurate videos in real time. But part of that process is making sure that we're gathering videos that are unaltered, making sure that we are gathering videos that have been verified, that making sure they are happening at that scene as they portray. And so as we're in the process of verifying more videos, Hallie, I have personally seen more of what we call this user-generated content that comes from witnesses, bystanders who are filming, typically on their cell phones. And of what I have seen personally, Hallie, at this point, we have seen bodies on the ground, and it looks like a war zone. Bodies that have been crumpled, that are inert, that are misshapen, and we see people running. We see exactly the chaos that the superintendent described. When that superintendent got on this morning, when you and I were both here behind the desk, and she said this was a person who was hell-bent on creating carnage. That is what I have seen in these videos. You see the panic, you see the chaos, and you see the destruction. And what we're also seeing from these videos, Hallie, is consistent with what we've heard now from the FBI. The FBI just released another statement confirming that the suspect is deceased, that they are now leading the investigation down there in New Orleans, and that they are confirming that this is in fact an act of terrorism, something that we heard the mayor say earlier on this morning about 7 o'clock Eastern time. And again, in consistency with those details we have been reporting thus far, as you mentioned, this happened at 3:15 a.m. local time there in New Orleans, when bystanders said that they saw this car, this truck, plow by at a high rate of speed, and that after that point is when he fired on officers. We know that 2 of those officers were shot, currently in stable condition at this point, and that could be possibly, again, Hallie, we are still waiting to verify that those were the gunshots we heard there in that video we just played for you. And of course, we know at this time they are also trying to figure out the activity of those homemade bombs, for lack of a better word, those explosive devices. The FBI is taking over. We know the Governor Landry has been briefed. We know the White House, of course, President Biden has been briefed. And now this is where this begins, right? Just for context, again, for our viewers, we're talking about New Orleans, the Big Easy, Crescent City. This is one of the hottest spots where you could be on New Year's, right? This is a place that was preparing for joy this New Year, especially as they have in about 11 hours from now their Sugar Bowl happening at kickoff. They have the Sugar Bowl parade they have been preparing for. And then, of course, remember, they have the Super Bowl coming up in a month. So this is a city, this is the most famous city in the entire state of Louisiana, Bourbon Street, where revelers go. And that's what I've been seeing in those videos, Hallie. People who were reveling, people who still had Mardi Gras beads on their necks. Now they were laying trampled in the street. We have more of those videos we are clearing in real time that we will bring to you and our viewers as soon as we do, Hallie.
It is difficult to watch, Morgan. It is difficult to see and to hear about. Morgan Radford, thank you. We will check back in with you later on in the morning. Let me bring in now our NBC News law enforcement analyst, Jim Kavanaugh, who is joining us again. Jim, you have heard the updates now from investigators. At this point, they are looking into that improvised explosive device. There was that bang that was heard by one of the local reporters for NBC News on the scene there in the French Quarter. We know that federal law enforcement sources have told us that the suspect, the driver, is dead. The investigation continues into the motive. The obviously recovery now continues for those 30+ people who are injured at the hospital, and for at least 10 families. It is a nightmare as this new year begins with their loved ones killed in this truck ramming.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking, Hallie, to see this death on New Year's Day. It's horrible. And what the bomb squad's doing now, it's a complicated thing for them at this point, because the FBI ASAC, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, said at the press conference that they found an IED. So when we have that information, now we have the bomb squad has got to go into that area. Of course, normally they're going to check the killer's car for a homemade bomb. That would be a routine process anyway. Now, what you also have, those people fleeing a chaotic scene like that are dropping bags, knapsacks, purses, all kinds of carry things that they'll drop along the way. And as they run and get out of the chaos, maybe trying to get out of the way of the attack, so there'd be a lot of things dropped on the street, and sometimes those things come into suspicion as well. Then we add on, this is New Year's Eve, and so people come to celebrations with noisemakers, and sometimes people come with small, firecracker type things that they want to, make loud noises with, that they pitch around. And so that's even layered on top of it. So what the bomb squad has to do now is go in there and they find something that doesn't look right, and they put what we call a disruptor on it, a water disruptor. And that is fired with a shotgun shell, and that's the sound you hear. You hear it's a shotgun shell. It doesn't mean there's a bomb there. It means something suspicious found. We don't want to open it with a human hand. We will set up our disruptor and we'll back off, 100 yards here or however far they can behind a building, and we'll fire the disruptor remotely, and it'll bust open the package, and then we'll be able to look at it. If it is actually a bomb, that disruptor often will, break the detonating chain. It will knock the blasting cap out from the explosives or knock the fuse mechanism out, and they can send a robot up with a camera and then look and see if, hey, is this just somebody's personal items, it's not a bomb at all, or was this something that was a bomb and we disrupted, or do we need to do further disruption on it if it is? So all that's happening, but it doesn't mean there's multiple bombs. Now, it could be, because the FBI ASAC said there was one IED. So we don't know exactly what that's made of. We don't know what that means. Was it in the truck? Did he have something in the truck he was going to light and throw? Is it more sophisticated than that? Is it large? Is it small? We don't have any data on that right now. But I think we'll probably get more of that at the news conference.
And that, again, scheduled for 11 o'clock in New Orleans. That's noon Eastern time. Jim, talk to us about the investigation on the ground now, because you have a massive law enforcement presence there and preparations in place already for the Sugar Bowl, that huge college football game that's happening tonight at the Superdome, which really isn't that far from the French Quarter.
Exactly, Hallie. Well, you have Louisiana State troopers from all over Louisiana heading south. I guarantee you that. They're moving their troopers down there. You got the Jefferson Parish deputies moving more people in, and surrounding counties probably coming to the aid of New Orleans, because they're going to need a lot more people to help secure that Sugar Bowl if it goes on, and it may still go on, but with even a heightened level of security. You got federal agents, FBI and ATF, laid on doing the investigation with, shoulder to shoulder with NOPD. So you've got all those white collar detectives, and they're trying to piece this guy together. And behind that, you have the intelligence apparatus of not only the New Orleans PD intelligence, Louisiana State Police intelligence, ATF intelligence, FBI intelligence, and if it turns out to be some internationally connected or inspired activity, then even our intel agencies who, worldwide have their feelers and intelligence out. So when we get the person's identity, motives, and maybe connection later today, we can see how widespread these dragnets for this guy are, and it's all to see, is he a lone mad dog, or is he, and maybe inspired by somebody, is he somebody that's has a personal revenge motive, not related to what we would call classic terrorism? But certainly it's not a drunk with a truck, because when he jumps out and shoots two uniformed New Orleans officers, and then they say he has a homemade bomb, which is just an IED, is just a fancy inside baseball police name for a homemade bomb, then that's a different kind of attack. It's just amazing that someone could drive all these blocks down Bourbon Street in a vehicle. I mean, Bourbon Street is just an iconic street, and I can't believe that somebody could get a vehicle in there. I mean, if those police barricades were those wooden barricades with orange and white stripes, I mean, you could push those over with your hands. So that's not going to stop any kind of a vehicle. So I don't know what kind of security they were doing there. I think, just to close, Hallie, I would say this. We all look at NYPD and we see how good they can do things like Times Square. But what we have to understand as well is, the NYPD has 40,000 officers. I mean, their special events team is somewhere near 3,000 officers. I mean, when they go in there, I mean, they're not leaving any stone unturned, and they've got the biggest city in the world, and they're going in there and securing that thing. The New Orleans chief said she had 300 officers there. Now, New Orleans is not the size of New York, granted, but the resources are different. But nevertheless, you've got to plan for weeks, because no one should be able to drive a truck through there, not in any condition. It should be dump trucks and garbage trucks, snow plow trucks, whatever you got that this Public Works Department has. The city controls all that. That should be all blocking those streets, and it should block the streets and to a point where, the crowds would thin on Canal. I've walked those streets, and I know many people and many Americans have. And, Bourbon is very dense. Bourbon Street's very dense. But when you get down to Canal, it's larger, it's wider. You can see it there on the feed. And, the crowds string out, going to various hotels, going in the crosswalk. And the killers want a target. They want a crowd. And in 1974, it was a terrorism analyst, Brian Jenkins, who said, terrorism is theater, terrorism theater. And that has held true every day since Brian Jenkins said it. Terrorism theater, and they want to go where the crowd is, where the cameras are, to get the most impact for their act. They don't want to run over 3 people. They want to run over 40 people. And that's what happened today.
Jim Kavanaugh, thank you very much. Our NBC News law enforcement analyst. It is a grim New Year's morning here to begin 2025 in New Orleans, as people are focused on the tragedy that has happened. As Jim mentioned, some 40 people plowed over by a driver in a truck at a New Year's Eve celebration just after 3 o'clock this morning. At least 10 people have been killed. Dozens of others are in the hospital, including 2 police officers who were shot when this suspect, believed to be dead, opened fire on police. There is also now an investigation into a homemade bomb in the area. We expect another update from police in just a few hours. And then later tonight, the Sugar Bowl is set to begin, that huge college football game. So the security precautions continue to be the biggest focus here in New Orleans. I want to play for you now what we heard from the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department describing the nightmare that her city is going through today. Watch.
And because of the intentional mindset of this perpetrator who went around our barricades in order to conduct this, he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did.
Hell-bent on creating carnage. Still so many questions now about the motivation of this driver, about the conditions of those victims who survived, as 10 families now are grieving the loss of their loved ones here to this start of 2025. We want to take you back now live to our local NBC station, WDSU, to join them in their continuing coverage. We'll listen in for just a bit.
Street right now. Earlier we were on Canal and Bourbon. I'm going to show you behind me. You can see some people are trying to get to their hotels or get to their jobs this morning as people are waking up, learning of the severity of the situation. Obviously, lots of people in a somber mood after they were just here celebrating last night, only to find out about those people who were injured, those multiple people who were died. Right now, we confirmed 10 people dead following this event and over 30 people in the hospital right now suffering injuries following what happened. Again, city leaders are asking that people stay clear of this area in the French Quarter while they conduct their investigation. Right now, they're combing through everything. They're looking through security footage, rolling back cameras to see exactly what happened and how this unfolded. We're expecting to get another update from city leaders at 11 this morning. We're about a few hours out from that, but right now, we're going to continue to bring you what we're seeing as this investigation is unfolding. Back to you, Travers.
Brittany, let's get to UMC. Aubrey Killian is standing by with Councilman Freddie King. As we all know, his district includes the French Quarter. Aubrey.
Hey, Travers, that's right. Yeah, we have a live exclusive interview with Councilman Freddie King. He's met us here at UMC. We can't thank you enough for your time. Walk me through what is the most new information you can share.
The most new information that I'm aware of is that the FBI is investigating this. This seems to be an act of terror, and the individual who committed this most likely was not acting alone. They're still trying to find their accomplices and a motive, and just more information. As much as FBI and OSPD is trying to locate as much information as possible.
So one question we're getting is how drivers can get around right now. What are their options?
Excuse me. Right now, I know it's open investigative scene, so I'm kind of going to defer to NOPD and FBI and state police as far as traffic in the quarter. Yeah.
And you mentioned that they're looking at additional potential people that may have aided the suspect.
Well, just was involved. From my understanding, this act like this person did not do it alone, or may have had an accomplice or two. So they're, when I say they're, law enforcement are looking for additional suspects.
When you first woke up, I called you, and what was your reaction? This happening the first day of the year in a city that we all love.
Right. This is something that you don't hear about happening in New Orleans. You read about it in novels. You see it on TV and movies. You don't think this happens in our city. We have our own issues with violence, but you just don't see this something of this magnitude happening in this city. It was a shock when I first heard it. My wife woke me up and said something happened in the French Quarter. You kind of go through your mind of what could it be, but then you realize this is possible, a terrorist attack and over 10 people killed and dozens hurt. Like, wow, not in this city. So it's still a bit shocking.
The bollards that are set up in the quarter, do we know how many does the city have? Were they put out? How many were put out? Do we know how that all went down last night?
Right now, that information is still a bit hazy. I know there's construction happening in the 700 and 800 block of Bourbon. Of course, this happened closer to the 100 and 200 block of Bourbon. So, as far as the bollards there, I'm not quite sure. I'm still getting information in from NOPD.
Our information that we're getting, the driver was able to drive around the bollard. Is that something we need to revisit and change, implement new and tighter security so this never happens again?
I would think so. Excuse me, I would think so. I think everything is on the table. Public safety for our visitors, for our residents, for our businesses is number one. So whatever it takes to make the city, French Quarter safer, I'm all for it. Definitely have this conversation with DPW, State Police, NOPD, whoever.
Do you think what we have right now is enough?
Clearly not. But I want to say this. When someone has their mind on doing harm and committing acts of violence, sometimes it's hard to stop. You can always prepare, but there's people who are always going to try to figure out how to beat the system and do harm. So we're just going to do the best we can as city leaders to figure out how to keep the city safe.
How will this impact the rest of the Sugar Bowl people in town? How will this impact the rest of the holiday season?
As far as the French Quarter and Bourbon, I know again it's a crime scene and there's a lot happening. I don't know which streets are open, which streets are closed for investigation purposes. I want to let people know that NOPD did a great job. They're doing a great job keeping us safe. Again, FBI is on the scene, state police is on the scene, so we have police officers here keeping us safe. I want to tell everybody to stay vigilant. Be aware of your surroundings and try, I know it's hard to say, but try to enjoy yourself as much as possible. But before I go on, to just give my condolences to those who lost loved ones and who are mourning this first day of the new year.
Have you had the chance to speak with any of the officers? I know it's kind of fluid, or any of the families that have been impacted by this horrible violence that happened today?
I did speak to Captain Roberts of the 8th District, and those officers that were shot, I believe, were of the 8th District, and he kind of let me know that they're doing fine, and they were the ones who took out the driver or the actor, but I have not spoken to the officers themselves or families of those lost or injured.
So the two officers are the ones that were shot. Those are the ones that got the driver out of the car.
That's my understanding. So the driver was killed, and I believe it was an exchange of fire between those officers and the driver, and they did kill the driver. Yeah.
Where were the two officers shot?
I'm not sure, but I do not believe it was life-threatening.
And what do you remember most from your conversation?
Well, with Captain Roberts, just saying how quickly his officers responded, that they definitely saved lives with their quick response. I want to thank the men and women of NOPD. They often get flack and catch a hard time from just doing their job. What we see today, they were quick on the scene, their training kicked in, and they definitely saved lives. So thank you to the men and women of NOPD, state police, all those law enforcement agencies that came together.
How will this impact, the Super Bowl is about to happen in our city. How will this impact the Super Bowl, Mardi Gras coming up?
Well, I'm sure, shame on us if we don't react to this and make the city safer, make the French Quarter safer. There's going to be conversations, I'm sure, all the way on the state level to how to make places safer in the city, how to make sure that ensure that drivers can't easily drive around bollards or through barricades, and keep the jewel of our city, which is the French Quarter, safe. We have hundreds of thousands of visitors coming for New Year's, coming for the Sugar Bowl, just always in this city, in the French Quarter. So we got to figure out how to keep us safe. Again, there's no foolproof plan. When someone wants to do something, they're not going to be stopped, but we got to just figure out how to deter them and keep our residents, visitors, and businesses safe.
Are there any other additional changes you would like to see in the quarter? Whether it's, bollards that are larger, is there any other additional changes that you would like to see and can make happen to make people feel safe?
Well, I think everything is on the table right now. You don't want to see something like this happen and not react. So we definitely had to see what works, what doesn't work, and how soon can we get something in place that is going to keep everyone safe. That's additional bollards, that's additional whatever, officers. We got to figure out a way to keep everyone safe as much as possible to the best of our ability. And as a legislator, and I'm up for the task and I'm going to do my part.
When is the last time the FBI is investigating this? When is the last time anything like this, to your knowledge, has happened?
To my knowledge, in this city, I can't remember anything. And I'm a little younger than most, so if it happened before me, maybe with the Howard Johnson shooting or something, I don't know. But in my recollection, it hasn't been. It's been a while.
And your message to the city right now is they're trying to wrap their minds around all this.
Stay vigilant, and just bear with us as we figure out what happened, why it happened, and how can we prevent this from happening in the future. I want to just, again, thank NOPD for their quick response. I can't thank those men and women enough. I know they saved lives today, and my hearts and prayers are with those who were injured and who lost family members today.
Do you know if any of the victims were children?
I don't have that information.
I can't thank you enough for your time. I know it's a very difficult situation to process, but we appreciate you coming out and speaking to us, while officers behind us here at UMC and many victims are recovering.
Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak and inform our community. As I get more information, I'll definitely keep you updated.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. All right. So again, that was Councilman Freddie King live on WDSU. He says additional safety improvements are needed. Those details will still be worked out, but stay with us on this developing story. Back to you.
We're now joined by Randy Russo in studio. Just to kind of recap what Aubrey said that Freddie King told him, New Orleans has never dealt with an act of terror in a very long time, if ever. But we did host the first Super Bowl after the 9/11 terror attack, which happened on September 11th, 2001. We did host the Super Bowl in February of 2002. We have the Super Bowl now in just about 5 weeks. So as Freddie King said, the city, state, and feds are probably going to reassess the security package for the Super Bowl.
And I know that you and I were just talking about this too. The Howard Johnson attack was probably the last major, event like that
Right.
you could probably consider as somewhat of a terrorist attack. But the fact that someone was just so brazen, we've got so many fans who are in town right now for the Sugar Bowl, so many Georgia fans who were in town last night, Notre Dame fans that were in town last night, and locals, who were out celebrating the new year. It was, when you wake up and you hear this news that this is happening right here in New Orleans as we are getting ready to prepare to host a Super Bowl in a matter of months, it's a tough pill to swallow. And not to mention the sheer response from NOPD officers. They were prepared. They had folks out there, but there was nothing to ever think to yourself that some guy's going to come roll around bollards and run into a crowd of people, IUDs in the middle of the French Quarter.
And look, on top of that, you speak of the Super Bowl, the CFP playoff, the eyes of the college football world and sports fans are on New Orleans right now. In just about 11 hours, the Sugar Bowl kicks off tonight. The Sugar Bowl did release a statement. There is no jeopardy to the game at this point right now. But I think we want to get back to Aubrey right now, who is at UMC, where almost all of these patients, I believe more than 20 were taken.
Yeah, he joins us now with Royce Duplessis, so many local leaders. And
you have been listening to our local NBC News station, WDSU, who have been conducting continuing coverage since this happened. Just after 3 o'clock this morning, a driver believed to be dead ramming his truck into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, killing at least 10, hurting more than 30 others, including 2 police officers. We opened fire on. They were shot. They are in stable condition, we understand. And there is also that investigation into a homemade bomb as well. I want to bring in now NBC News Justice correspondent Ken Delanian. And Ken, we're getting one of the first images of what allegedly appears to be the pickup truck involved here. I want to show it to people here. You can see it, that white pickup truck. The police superintendent said this driver was hell-bent on carnage. And you can see it there, Ken.
Yeah, I can't see the picture you're showing, Hallie, but I've seen other photos that show a white, what looks like a Ford F-150 pickup truck with Texas plates. And that will tell the authorities a lot. They'll be able to run down the provenance of that truck, the ownership history, potentially where it pinged on toll transponders. They will determine exactly where that truck has been in recent hours. And no doubt it's very likely they know the identity of this suspect and are now running down social media connections, talking to relatives, trying to determine a motive here in a case that, again, to recap, the FBI is saying they are investigating as an act of terrorism. That doesn't mean they've determined it is terrorism, but they are investigating it as a potential act of terrorism. And clearly the authorities are saying that this man intended to kill as many people as possible. This was not only a vehicle attack, he then shot 2 New Orleans police officers, and the FBI is saying there were potential bombs, potential improvised explosive devices. So a complex attack that appeared to have taken a lot of planning. And again, you're seeing this white pickup truck with Texas plates that was instrumental to the attack, Hallie.
And Ken, as we know, President Biden has been briefed. The Attorney General Merrick Garland has been briefed on this. You talk about the FBI investigating this as an act of terror here. Explain why that is more than simply a semantic distinction, why that's critical moving forward.
Yeah, well, and you knew that it was a huge deal when you saw the FBI in the initial news conference of the day stand up and say, we're taking control of this investigation. And the local police chief and the mayor essentially said, we're handing this off to the FBI. They would only do that if they had evidence that this was more than just a local matter, a personal grievance. Obviously, they knew it was intentional right away, but there's something that they saw that made them think that this was potentially terrorism. That doesn't necessarily mean an overseas connection. It doesn't mean ISIS-inspired, although we have seen ISIS-inspired vehicle attacks in Germany and in New York City over the years. It's potentially related to domestic extremism or potentially, sort of a motive that we can't divine right now. But the FBI taking the lead because they believe that there are indications here of a terrorist motive here, somebody that wanted to inflict mass casualties to make a point, to send a message, some political or ideological point. That's sort of how the FBI thinks about terrorism, and that's what they're looking at right now.
It is possible, Ken, and you alluded to this, but to be clear and to say it explicitly here, it is entirely possible that law enforcement knows who this driver is, even if the rest of the public, journalists, for example, do not. At this point, this investigation could potentially encompass not just the city of New Orleans, not just the state of Louisiana, but multiple states across wherever this investigation may lead.
Of course, that's absolutely right, Hallie, especially because we're seeing a Texas plate on this truck. So that obviously expands the perimeter of this investigation, at least to Texas. But yes, I mean, we've seen this before, sadly, too many times. The FBI and partner federal agencies are now running down every speck of digital dust that this person has left online. And we all have online fingerprints and footprints that we leave. Whether he had an active social media profile or not, they will determine a lot of information about this subject. And because he was deceased at the scene, it's very likely that they do have an identity through fingerprints or potentially a wallet in his pocket or potentially the plate that they're able to run on the truck. And so, yes, there's no doubt that they know a lot of information. Hopefully they'll reveal at least some of it at their 11 a.m. briefing, and we'll get more clarity on exactly what was motivating this event, Alan.
Yeah, that briefing set to begin just about 2 hours and change from now, where we expect to see more updates. Ken, one of the things that we're looking at now, and some of these images coming in, we've seen the pickup truck now. We've seen that very short clip. It's just about 4 seconds long of people running. It appears to be the immediate aftermath of this truck ramming. You can hear in the background what sound like gunshots going off. That would place that moment, and you're seeing it here, maybe 3:14, 3:15 in the morning. Obviously, people on the street wrapping up after the ball dropped at midnight in New Orleans there in the early morning hours. It is very scary to watch. And as we heard from an eyewitness who was on this street, he ducked into a nightclub when he heard some of this commotion happening up the street. He says when that car raced down the road, he said, plowing over people, something like 8 to 10 blocks at a very, very fast clip. Part of this investigation is going to involve how that car could have been on that road, how it managed to get through several of those blocks, considering how packed the French Quarter was at that point.
Yeah, that's a huge question. And obviously, And when this happened in 2017 in New York City, the NYPD completely reevaluated how it secured crowded scenes downtown and began deploying heavy trucks, sand trucks, and dump trucks at particular events to try to prevent this kind of thing from happening. It's difficult to second guess the security posture in a place like New Orleans, Bourbon Street, where people have been gathering in large crowds for more than a century, and nothing like this has ever happened before. So clearly, they weren't thinking about this kind of possibility. They didn't have the kind of barriers that would have prevented this kind of thing from happening. But you can't fully prevent something like this. That's why it's so horrific. It's just really the most chilling sort of attack, because it's people, when they least expect it, are celebrating, and they're gathered in a city where they expect to be safe. And there are vehicles all around, and this person had ill intent and was able to overcome whatever barriers they had. That's certainly going to be a question going forward, though. And you can imagine next year when people are gathering on Bourbon Street, there will be a much different security posture. Unfortunately, this was a hard lesson that this city had to learn, and hopefully other cities will be looking very closely at how this happened.
Ken Delanian, thank you very much. I want to go now to Gabe Gutierrez, one of our NBC News senior White House correspondents. And Gabe, we're learning in just the last few moments that it sounds like President Biden has spoken with the mayor of New Orleans at least once today already, right?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Now, President Biden has been briefed on the situation here, according to the White House, and as you said, has spoken with the mayor of New Orleans. Now, President being briefed by not just FBI officials, but also senior officials from the Department of Homeland Security, and the White House says that he will continue to be briefed throughout the day. Now, the president right now in Wilmington, Delaware, after ringing in the new year there. He attended a private wedding ceremony last night, and he is scheduled to depart for Camp David a little later on today. Now, we are here in South Florida near Mar-a-Lago, where President-elect Trump celebrated the new year here with a party at his estate. We have not yet heard from the Trump transition yet, but we have reached out. But again, that news that President Biden has spoken at least once so far with the mayor of New Orleans and plans to continue receiving briefings here throughout the day. Hallie, as you know, one of the roles for the president, not just commander-in-chief, but consoler-in-chief. And we have not yet received the word on whether or when we might get any official statement from President Biden. So far, the White House has not shared any details on any changes to his schedule at all, or whether he might plan to address the public at all as he departs for Camp David. Hallie.
Gabe Gutierrez, live for us down there in South Florida. Gabe, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you if we hear anything else from President Biden or from the White House in the hours to come. Let's go back now to former Secret Service Special Agent Evie Pomporis, who's joining us now live. And Evie, in the lingo of law enforcement, if you will, this is what you call a soft target, right? Explain the difficulty in protecting these kinds of places, like what we're seeing and what we saw overnight in the French Quarter.
Anytime you have an open area like this, multiple ways in and out, it's a soft target. And as we're watching the video footage, and I've been paying attention and jotting notes down, you don't really see any hardened security perimeter. You see those white and orange half boards. Those are actually called parade barricades. They do nothing. You can kick that over with your foot and it falls down. You see some bike rack. Again, it's easily movable. I understand that there was police presence. They had about 300 plus officers. Here's the thing, when you're dealing with a vehicle, driving like that, it is a very difficult thing to stop. A car is a weapon. A car is a weapon. We are very fortunate that he actually crashed his vehicle. Otherwise, he would have done more damage. And I do want to push slightly back. I respect my brothers and sisters in law enforcement, but you are New Orleans, and this is for everybody out there. We are major cities. You've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I keep hearing, this has never happened here. We just saw this, was it 2 weeks ago, happen in Germany. When these things happened in other places, in Germany, there was a man who deliberately drove his vehicle, bypassed their barricades, deliberately drove through a Christmas market, killing 5 people, injuring almost 200 people. We must pay attention to these. We have to have imagination when it comes to law enforcement. There are 17,000 law enforcement entities in the United States. When I say that, different departments, sheriffs, counties, PDs, everybody should be paying attention. Everybody should be thinking, I need to be proactive. How can I prevent this stuff? So I I kindly disagree, and that this is a big event. Thousands of people, you know it's going to gather people, you know it's going to gather attention. This is not that soft of a target per se. Like, you have that awareness, and we need to do a better job securing everybody. All these departments need to be paying attention. Look what is going on outside. Look at what is happening. We have a responsibility to keep people safe and secure. Improvise vehicles, buses. I have used yellow buses, school buses to secure sites. That's right. I went to a town that didn't have the plow trucks. They didn't have sanitation. So I said, school buses. You know those big yellow school buses? Give me those. And I lined them up to create a perimeter to secure my site. It's called being creative and using our imagination. But we have a duty to people when they come to these events to feel safe and secure. And quite honestly, when I hear like, we're surprised, we didn't know, we're missing the mark there.
The superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department, when she delivered that update, the only one we've gotten officially so far, just a couple of hours ago, she said that this driver went around the barricades. Evie, to your point here about securing a site. Is it, again, there's a lot of questions here that we don't know. There is a question about some of the bollard replacement or barricade replacement that had been happening in New Orleans ahead of course, their hosting of the Super Bowl just next month now. They've got Mardi Gras coming up in a couple of weeks here. How would somebody be able to get around barricades if it was to be secure the way that you described? Or is it still possible for a motivated individual to be able to conduct an attack like this in that instance?
With a vehicle, no. If you're putting trucks, plow trucks, sanitation trucks, you're spreading them out. Even RMPs, radio motor patrol vehicles, which are police vehicles. If you're using cement barricades, I'm not talking about the plastic stuff. I'm talking about something that you can't move. If you spread them out strategically, yes, you can. You know, maybe you can't do the whole area, but you can do the inner perimeter where you've got your maximum amount of people. It's doable. Why they didn't do it, I suspect, and again, I don't know. What I'm hearing, and as I heard the council person speak before in the local network, we've never had this before. We didn't expect this. We're surprised. You know, I think the public deserves better than that. They really do. Like, our job is to serve and protect. And to, you know, part of being in law enforcement is using your imagination. Every time I did a security perimeter or did something, I would have to use my imagination. I wouldn't think, how would I secure this as law enforcement? I would think, how would I, if I were the bad guy, if I were the bad actor, how would I get in? And then I would reverse engineer it. Okay, if I can get in through here, I've got a hole. How do I plug that hole? So I think again, just based on what we're seeing, we don't know, it's not been verified. Just what we see through the shots, it's just parade barricades, which is like, it's just cardboard. It's wood that you can knock over, and bike rack. You're seeing it right now. There's the bike rack next to that officer. If that's all they put in place, well then yes, a vehicle is going to be able to get through that.
I want to point out here that the city in 2017, according to NOLA.com, had installed some mechanical barriers, basically some steel barriers in the French Quarter after an attack in France, a major ramming attack in France the year before. We also understand that there was this project, as I referenced earlier, to replace some of those older steel bollards in the areas like the French Quarter ahead of some of those events that are coming up, Evie. All of which is to say there are a number of questions still remaining about the security in place. There's also a number of questions about the events coming up. Obviously, tonight you've got the Sugar Bowl that is set to kick off later in the evening from the Superdome. That's not too far away from where this happened, just about a mile away from Bourbon Street. Evie, you've talked before about how sometimes those kinds of sites are a bit easier to secure, but obviously there will be an intense focus on the security posture heading into tonight's big college football game with thousands of people in from out of town for that event.
Look, it's all hands on deck. Everything I'm hearing is everybody's coming in from everywhere to help out. All the law enforcement entities, they're going to be working today. They're going to be going to the Sugar Bowl. So when you look at the Sugar Bowl, we're looking at two things you're trying to secure: the inner perimeter, the outer perimeter. Inner perimeter is the stadium itself. That's not a hard thing to secure. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's parts and components to it, but I have got a structure. It keeps people out. I designate where people are coming in. Where I decide people come in, I set up my magnetometers, my presence. I make sure all my other doors and entryways are locked. Nobody can get in. They are posted with police. And I mag and check people. And as people are coming in, I am making sure that they are clean. Also, prior to letting people in, they've checked the stadium itself. They've gone through it with dogs. They're looking for explosive devices. They're making sure that the stadium itself is clean. that nobody came in the day before, the night before, the week before, and left something, a device, a weapon. So you're going to check the event itself, the site structure itself, make sure it's clean. I've got a clean site. Good. Now I've got my police presence structured outside. Then I'm going to open the doors and I'm going to make sure the people coming in are clean and everybody inside my event is clean. That's phase one. The other phase, which is a little bit more loose and probably a little more difficult, throws you to deal with here, is the parking lot area. Let's not forget that outer perimeter. There are people there too. They're parking their vehicles. There are families. People sit sometimes and they hang out in their trucks and they will barbecue. They will do things. So you've also had a massive amount of people outside of the stadium. That's a little bit more trickier to secure because it's a bit more open. But again, fencing, structure, making sure there's police presence, that there's vehicle, that there are cars roaming up and down and patrolling. So that's the other part of the venue that you're going to have to secure as well. So you've got the site itself and then the outer perimeter of the site. We definitely don't want to forget that one. And you also want to think about, again, maybe the way my mind thinks just from security, not just weapons, not just cars, but, you want to think chemical, biological. Is somebody going to bring something in? Radiation. These are things you really want to think about. Often when I would secure sites, big stadiums, I would have elements outside of that stadium detecting for radiation, detecting for chemical, biological. You really have to think above and beyond. The traditional way of securing things is gone. It's done. We are done. We are in a new place, in a new phase, and we all have to catch up and make sure we are thinking ahead. The bad guy, the bad actors, they think ahead. They sit down and they put plans in place. They do their homework. They do their research. They are doing what they can. And, we really need to be ahead of the curve as much as possible. Do we have good aerial footage? Do they have drones up looking at what's going around in the area? Proactive. That's really the key. Catching this stuff before it happens. Once we're reactive, it's really, really hard. We see it here. In just something simple, using a vehicle as a weapon, how do you stop that vehicle? Do you know how hard that is to stop, even with police on the ground? Even if you engage and start shooting at that vehicle, like how difficult it is to actually get the person to stop. And then if, let's say you strike the driver, they crash and who knows who else they're gonna hurt. So you really wanna think beyond and above. And I had hoped that with what happened at the German market, the Christmas market, that we would have been a little bit more on guard and on point. And, I think that now that this happened with New Orleans, everybody in our cities, in the United States, all these police chiefs and commissioners, they should be paying attention and thinking, I need to change the way I do things. I need to think beyond the traditional way of doing law enforcement. And I cannot wait for something to happen in my city and be surprised by it before I make those changes.
Evie Pompouris, former Secret Service Special Agent. Evie, we're glad to have your perspective and your analysis this morning. Thank you very much. I want to go back now to our NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter, because, Tom, it sounds like some of your sources are suggesting that perhaps they may be getting closer to an identification of the driver here.
I think so, Hallie, and I think, not surprisingly, and it's probably the way it should work initially in an investigation, is that the investigation is ahead of what we know and what we're reporting, and I think that's very much the case here. And so I think that there's a definite consensus as to who they were engaged with last night, and they'll conduct their work from there. Specifically, want to point out that we've now verified an image from the scene showing a late model white pickup truck with Texas license plates. So they're obviously keyed in onto the license plate. I referenced this with you earlier this morning, and really all the things that we've discussed are coming into view. Who this person is, the license plate, the vehicle, all that information, very helpful at this point. The FBI now saying on the record in a statement from our colleague, provided by our colleague Ken Delanian, that they are investigating this as an act of terrorism. They note that it was a vehicle ramming. The number of individuals who've been killed, obviously we know from New Orleans officials that number stands at 10. It's possible those numbers could change. We also know that the person who conducted this attack conducted it and was deceased after firing at 2 New Orleans police officers, or perhaps more police officers, but at least 2 were struck and are currently at the hospital in stable condition. And so this investigation is very much ongoing. There's active work that's being done, and we'll have to see where it goes with respect to the actual motive. Remember, as you well know, Hallie, terrorism covers a number of different things. It can be inspired or directed by a foreign terrorist organization, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. It could also be something motivated by an individual who has an ideology closer to home, whether it be a hate against a specific community or group of individuals, a political cause. We've seen it all in the last year or two, and we've certainly seen, to Evie's point, these type of attacks, the vehicle ramming attacks, executed throughout the world. So everything we've been discussing this morning now all coming into focus. Obviously, they're moving forward with this investigation, and so I'm hopeful that the next update we get from law enforcement, we'll have some more information and hopefully can get a little bit closer to the motive. There's at least one possible IED, so an improvised explosive device. In English, Hallie, that just means something that somebody created at home that could have been an explosive, or it could have been an incendiary device designed to create some sort of large fire if triggered. Whether or not it was a device that actually could have gone off, whether it was designed as a hoax device to slow down law enforcement, whether it was something that the person just didn't have enough capability or know how to go off, or it didn't go off because they were involved in eventually hitting what appears to be kind of one of those mobile lifting platforms. Those are all questions that are obviously going to be known by people at the scene. They may still be investigating those things, so we just don't know yet. There are some indications this vehicle traveled several blocks, or at least one block, so I think then that goes back to the security question. Those questions will be answered in time, but it does appear that this was not something that happened just at the entrance of a security checkpoint, so I think that's important. Another thing that we're looking at is whether or not this individual was armed with a semi-automatic handgun, more of a pistol, to be not as technical, or whether they actually had a long gun on their person. That's information we're looking into as well, and hopefully we'll have some more clarity on that shortly.
Tom, you talk about the security posture here. It is reverberating not just in New Orleans ahead of the kickoff for the Sugar Bowl later on tonight, but also around the country. You look at, for example, the Rose Parade that is set to start really in just about 45 minutes from now out in Pasadena, California, ahead of the Rose Bowl later on tonight. And we have a statement now from the organizers saying that they stand in solidarity with the state of Louisiana during this difficult time, going on to talk about some of the security in place for the parade. It is a top-level federal event, they say. They have a hard shutdown of vehicles along the entire parade route, in addition to what they describe as very robust vehicle barriers at intersections, with more than 1,000 law enforcement working the parade and the game. And any other day, Tom, this would be fairly typical to have a security plan in place for an event like the Rose Bowl or the Rose Parade, but it becomes newly relevant today after what we saw this morning in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we published a story, I believe it was Monday evening on NBCnews.com, talking, and it was in a note that we sent around that came from a Department of Homeland Security compiled assessment for New Year's Eve. It was specific to New York and involved all the law enforcement agencies here, but they noted vehicle ramming attacks and the idea that this is something that's been out there. It's been talked about. There was the Christmas market attack in Germany. I referenced that earlier this morning when you and I were speaking. And so we've seen these type of incidents before. It's repeatedly referenced in terrorism propaganda, including some of more recent terrorism propaganda. But beyond that, even if you're not somebody who's a believer in ISIS as an example, it's well known for people that want to conduct attacks, no matter what your ideology is, that's something that you can do. So I'm not surprised that they're talking about that in California, and I think it's something that will be looked at closely here.
Tom, thank you. I want to dip back into our local NBC station, WDSU, doing a live interview now with the district attorney for the area, Jason Williams. Let's listen in.
Because that tells a story. That provides information. If there are other items found in other places that are connected to this individual, that tells a story. So I don't want to comment on the specifics of that investigation and what we know and what we're still trying to find out. it's still too fluid.
What about the other explosive devices that they are trying to track around the quarter? I know that the NOPD, certain agencies, they went through, they did a sweep before all of this. They had a plan in place, but really we were talking like this whenever Aubrey was giving his live report a moment ago. It's really hard to prevent something like this. You know, you can't constantly sweep the French Quarter, or can you? Or are there things that you can do to constantly change that and, you know, increase the security there?
There is a human instinct to try to figure out how this could have been prevented. And unfortunately, there are certain things that are beyond our human control. When an individual chooses to drive a vehicle into a crowd of people, the officers can respond, and they can respond quickly. And that's exactly what they did, and they should be commended for their quick, fast work because it saved more lives. I think we have to look at it from that standpoint. We can't get inside of someone's head. We can't reverse engineer. This is not Minority Report, no matter how many experts you have. But what you can do is have a plan, and you can have officers in place, first responders in place, and they were there. And they did respond, and they did save some lives, and when we all owe them greatly.
All right, District Attorney Jason Williams, we do appreciate you stopping by live. It's a hard day for everybody because we keep going back to this. I mean, it is rare, if ever, that we have dealt with a quote-unquote terror attack in the city of New Orleans.
Well, especially with such a high-profile tourist weekend. You know, I think that that's the hardest thing for us to really contend with right now. We've got this is a big game tonight. There's so many fans, like from Georgia, from Notre Dame, who are in town right now.
It's the biggest game of the year for me. I was looking forward to today. It is the first day of our new year. There are no words.
All right.
Again, we do appreciate your time so much. And again, if you could keep us posted on any new developments that you get, and our hearts and prayers do go to those victims.
Yeah. All right, we do have crew.
Jason Williams there, the Orleans Parish District Attorney, speaking with our local NBC station, WDSU. You heard him say there are no words. I want to go now to NBC's Morgan Radford, who, along with our team, has been following some of the images that are coming in now of the scene, of the aftermath, and what has played out. These are clues that investigators are and will be looking at, Morgan, and they also give us a sense of just how horrific this, in the words of the police chief, carnage has been.
Yeah, Hallie, they're clues, they are data, they're indications of what we have thus far. So if you can, I want to walk you through what we have, how we found it, and what is pending. What we have, let's start with these videos sequentially. Number one, I want to show you this video with what appears to be gunshots. You see people rushing to aid a victim there on the ground. We have that body blurred. And then as soon as you hear these loud shots, what appear to be gunshots, ring out, you see bystanders run. Secondly, I want to take you to a video. I want to warn every single viewer here that the video I'm about to show you is far more graphic. You see the camera panning to the right. Again, this is user-generated content, meaning this was filmed on cell phone video from bystanders. Those three circles you see on the left right here as we go over the banister, those are bodies. Those are bodies that are laying misshapen on the ground. The first body appears to be a white human there on the ground. The stomach is exposed. And then what you see there is a bystander in shorts, purse over her shoulder, looking around right there where your camera's frozen. And I have to say, Hallie, of all the videos I have combed through, that is actually the most heartbreaking image to me. Because if you watch this video, and I've watched it countless times, that bystander is sort of pulled away, tugged by, it appears to be a police officer, emergency responder, and she can't move. She cannot take her eyes off of what she's seeing. Presumably a friend, perhaps someone she knows there on the ground. She is literally in traction, stuck in place. And then if you look further down, you can see these green authorities running past her. But then further to her right, there is another body on the ground. This body face down. And you see someone there also coming to their aid. But I think what this shows us, Hallie, is not only what has happened, but the chilling effect of the psychology of a community when something like this happens. So that's a bystander who will be unable to forget that image for the rest of her life. And then those of us who are combing through these videos are seeing more and more of reactions like that. And if you heard earlier when you and I were both here on the desk sort of listening to that initial press conference from the mayor and from the superintendent, the intendant was saying, look, you know, I want you all to know the city's going to be safe later on today. We have this sugar bowl. We want you to go about your day. But this is what they're dealing with, right? They're trying to encourage the community to continue to enjoy the city, known as the Crescent City, the Big Izzy, one of the most popular cities in, you know, the American memory for fun and revelry. But it's hard to convince people to be safe when there is still more to come in terms of safety measures now for this Sugar Bowl, and then subsequently for the Super Bowl that's going to be in New Orleans in just a month, because the psychology and the after effects of this is chilling. People are prepared for gunshots and their worst case. People have been hearing about this in school shootings, countless of school shootings we've covered, but now they're having to worry about a car barricading through people, killing 10 people, injuring dozens more, and sending them to a hospital in a city that is known for fun and renewal. But I also want to tell you how we found these videos, because I think, you know, in this age of media where there is so much mistrust, the good thing about user-generated content, again, content we get from viewers, is that it allows us this peek, right, to peel back the camera for people who are there in real time. The hard part is that we have to do so much work to verify these videos. So it's important to our viewers know that's why these teams are important. That's why the hardworking people who are here on New Year's Day at NBC News are important, because we do what social media cannot do. We make sure that we are verifying these videos, we are bringing you accurate videos, we are bringing them to you in real time, and that they are in fact depicting the images that they say they are depicting. So we have teams who are working around the clock, talking to sources on the ground, but also making sure that we aren't in violation of copyright risk, that we do what's something called fair use in an issue like this, in breaking news real time and matters of the public interest, where we can show you videos like this. I want to show you a third video when we're talking about that, of this white truck. This is allegedly, possibly, the truck that right here on your screen that the suspect used. And if you look very closely, my producer here beside me, Carolina Gonzalez, was showing me, if you look on the back, there appears to be a pole, almost like there's a flag or some sort of cloth that is tethered, that is black to the end of that pole. But if you look even closer, you can see 4 holes in the back of that windshield. They appear to be gunshot holes, right? I mean, we do not have that verified. There are 4 holes in the glass that appear to be gunshot holes that are consistent with the reporting that we have. But Hallie, you know, we still have images that are pending. As I mentioned, we have a series of checks and balances process at an organization this large to make sure that all the videos that we're coming through, I'm coming through, our producers are coming through, are checked and accurate. And one of the videos I've seen, I've been looking at a lot of videos that we can't yet share because they haven't finished going through that completion process. There's another one that I looked at recently that shows, it looks like emergency responders rendering aid. And they're rendering aid to a body on the ground beside that white truck. We also see other people who were bystanders who were rendering aid to other victims along the way. And again, that is before, oftentimes it was consistent with when you heard those apparent gunshot wounds or loud rounds, loud bangs that we heard in the air. So that is how we're finding these videos. That is how we are bringing these videos. And that's how we're able to report on the details that, again, are consistent with what authorities have reported thus far, that this happened at 3:15 local time there in New Orleans, that in the sequence of event, that alleged driver plowed through a crowd of people and then began a shootout with police, and in that shootout injured 2 police officers who are currently in stable conditions. Of the things that we're waiting to hear are the current conditions of the victims, those 26 who are currently in the hospital, the identities of the victims, the identities of the alleged gunman, shooter, the person who was plowing through this mass casualty event, creating hellbent on the chaos, as we heard the superintendent say, that was created in the Crescent City today. Hallie.
Morgan Radford, thank you so much for walking us through that. Let's take it back to our local NBC News station, WDSU, on the phone now with the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Louisiana. Let's listen in.
I had a national press person, as he was getting on a plane to head to New Orleans, asked me if I could confirm that there was an ISIS flag on the back of the truck. And that's what he heard. I do not know that for a fact, but that was told by a reporter that was boarding a plane from New York to come to New Orleans to cover this story just about 45 minutes ago. but I don't want to start a rumor. That's just what he had heard, and he had asked me to confirm that, which I could not do.
We do want to say that is not confirmed at this time, Lieutenant Governor. It's still a fluid situation. We don't know anything about the suspect, but that is not confirmed at this time. We just know that the person drove the truck down Bourbon Street, killing 10. We do appreciate your time and you taking the time to join us from California, where you are right now.
Let's continue to pray for everyone. Thank y'all.
All right, we also want to get to what we do know, the timeline of events, how this unfolded, because so many of you are waking up this morning. Maybe you had New Year's Eve celebrations, and now you're waking up to this news. Daryl Forges is joining us now live with what we're learning about the situation and a timeline of exactly what unfolded in the early morning hours along Canal and Bourbon.
Yeah, Randy and Travers, we just got some new information just into the newsroom just a few moments ago. A picture from what sources say is the pickup truck that crashed into people.
You have been listening to our local NBC station, WDSU, showing that photograph that we have been showing you of what allegedly appears to be that pickup truck involved in this horrific New Year's Day ramming in the city of New Orleans on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. At least 10 people killed. You see the photograph there, 30 plus in the hospital, including 2 police officers who were shot when the driver, who is now believed to be dead, opened fire on police. There is also an investigation into a homemade bomb that police are looking into as well. I want to go to Ken Delaney now, who's tracking all of it. Obviously, Ken, the president is aware of this. He's been briefed. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has been briefed as well, as the FBI is calling this a potential act of terror. That's how they're investigating this.
That's right, Hallie. And we have a new statement from the Attorney General, which I want to summarize for you. But before I do that, I just want to mention this, just speak to the thing we just heard from the Lieutenant Governor of Louisiana about this idea that there may have been an ISIS flag on the truck, and the reporter made clear that's not confirmed. We can see in photographs that there's a PVC piping and a black cloth emanating from that on the back of the truck. I have been asking, Tom Winter has been asking our federal law enforcement sources what that was, and we have gotten no good answers to that. So just to be clear, we don't know what that was. There's no confirmation that there's any link to ISIS as of right now. Obviously, we're asking those questions. Now, as for the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who's got 3 weeks left in office, he issued a statement sort of trying to console the nation. He pointed out that the country woke up this morning to news of a terrible tragedy, 10 people killed, many more injured. He said his heart is broken for those who began their year by learning people they love were killed in this horrific attack. And he added that the FBI is investigating this matter as an act of terrorism. He said the FBI, the ATF, the Justice Department's National Security Division, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Louisiana will continue to work with law enforcement partners and will deploy every available resource to conduct this investigation. So look, clearly, this is more than a local tragedy. This is a national incident. It's being investigated as a potential act of terror. Merrick Garland fully engaged on this. The president has been briefed. The FBI taking the lead in this investigation, Hallie.
Ken Delaney, and Ken, thank you very much for that. Obviously, still so many questions here. I want to just reset for folks for a moment who may just be joining us on the West Coast or elsewhere as you're just waking up, to let you know what's going on. Just after 3 o'clock this morning, as we've been reporting here on this NBC News special report, a man driving a pickup truck, that white pickup truck that we showed you, plowed into a crowd of people right here in the French Quarter at Bourbon Street near Canal Street in New Orleans, driving at least some distance, according to eyewitnesses, down Bourbon Street, killing at least 10 people. 30 plus people are in the hospital as we speak. According to police, the driver then opened fire on New Orleans police officers, 2 of whom were shot. They are in the hospital in stable condition. There is also a homemade bomb, essentially, what police are calling an investigation into an improvised explosive device that was found in this area as well. We have heard just heart-wrenchingly graphic descriptions of what it was like in the aftermath of this terrible scene on New Year's Day in New Orleans, with new questions now about the security surrounding this area. You are looking now at some of the scenes of the aftermath. That short clip in the background, you can hear what sounds like the audio of gunshots going off, the sound of gunshots. The police say that this driver managed to get around barricades, although some eyewitnesses have suggested they did not see a number of bollards or barricades in place. Remember, all of this is happening just hours before the Sugar Bowl is set to kick off at the Superdome in New Orleans, drawing in crowds of thousands. of college football fans looking to see Georgia and Notre Dame play tonight. The security posture in place intense in New Orleans as this investigation continues. I want to take you back now to some local coverage from our NBC station there, WDSU, for more.
Police were sweeping the area, and some of those were possibly detonated.
Yeah, and again, let me just tell you right now, it looks like the quarter may actually be opening up a little bit for the first time in hours. Taxi cab driving right now, resident in a car driving right now. So it does appear that the state police and the NOPD are potentially, just based on some of the traffic patterns that I'm seeing, are opening up the quarter just a little bit right now. We do have some more police cruisers coming through. We're on Dauphine in Orleans. If photojournalist Stefan Cage goes to his left, you'll see St. Louis Cathedral. Right on the other side, of course, Jackson Square. And this is really a sad sight. You see the St. Louis Cathedral. You see the beautiful shot of the French Quarter looking down Orleans, right here at Dauphine towards Bourbon. And then you see the police tape there. The reason the police tape is up is because of what you alluded to, Travers, that the ongoing investigation here, the FBI said they were searching for IEDs, which is hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about IEDs. We normally hear about that, about conflicts in other countries, and we're talking about an IED search in the French Quarter because there were reports that the suspect may have planted those devices in the quarter. The Special Operations Unit came to Bourbon and Orleans, where you're looking right now. There was a suspicious package here. 2 different times we heard fire in the hole and we heard a detonation. 2 different times. It sounded like a loud firecracker going off. Mike Kahn can give you more perspective on this, but what some of the people here told us is that is a precaution. They're detonating the suspicious package to make sure that it isn't anything more grave or dire. There was never a sense of panic in law enforcement. There was never a sense of clear the entire area. We had to move 1 block back. But as of right now, large portions of the French Quarter completely closed off to driving traffic. People can walk through this area and people can walk around, but there is no driving in this area of the French Quarter right now. We also saw police officers doing sweep searching each and every trash can, gloves, flashlights, looking for more suspicious packages as well here in the French Quarter. I will say the police presence has dissipated a little bit over the last 20 or 30 minutes, and it does appear potentially, I don't want to put anything out there that we don't know for sure, but it does appear that the quarter is loosening up a little bit. There's more media here now. Some cars are being able to drive through, and as people wake up and get out, they are definitely walking through this area on Dauphine Street right now.
All right, Fletcher, hang tight. We are going to come back to you. We also have numerous crews, Aubrey Killian, Cassie Sherm, Brittany Ferner, Anam Siddiqui. They're all over this in the French Quarter right now. And Mike Kahn, who was at his house for a couple of hours here, is now joining us live in studio.
And for those of you who are just joining us, we want to recap just for a moment. 10 people dead, 35 hurt in hospitals at this hour. Portions of the French Quarter still blocked off after someone committed an act of terror early this morning, plowing into the French Quarter near Bourbon and Canal with a truck and just creating havoc and really a worse nightmare for New Orleans, especially as we are preparing to host one of the biggest bowl games in the country tonight.
Yeah, 10 people killed, 35 injured. The suspect shot and killed by 2 police officers. Those police officers who got into that gun battle also shot and injured. They are in stable condition. Let's just jump right into this. You've been on TV at your home in Zoom. We do appreciate you joining us now live in studio. The feds have taken the lead on this, but before we get to that, Randy mentioned this. You have some breaking news about possible trafficking going to the Sugar Bowl tonight.
Yeah, I can tell you that for all the hotels and everyone else going to the Sugar Bowl tonight, you will not be able to drive inside that inner perimeter or where you would normally go if it were a game day for the Saints or for the basketball team or anything else. So you will not be able to drive anywhere in Poydras Street or anywhere where that perimeter leads from those hotels to the Superdome tonight at all.
What does that mean for the parking garages, too? Because I know a lot of people tend to park in those parking garages. Do we know anything about security there or amped up security just around the Superdome in general? Because, I mean, a lot of people are now concerned about that.
Right. I would think that the parking garages, and this is a plan that's still in motion, I would think the parking garages that extend right off of Poydras would be shut down as well, as to the best of the ability of the police department with manpower allocations and other things like that. But I would think that your side streets and your main thoroughfares will all be shut down to only allow pedestrian traffic to go see the game tonight.
You were a police officer for a very long time. You ran the SWAT team. We were just talking about this. We can't recall any incident like this. Maybe the Howard Johnson shooting, maybe the upstairs lounge fire. But when you hear active terrorism and somebody driving down a city street with the intent to kill people, this may be essentially historic. It may be a first time for the city of New Orleans.
It's been the first time. I've been a policeman for over 33 years with the police department, and it's the first time that we've ever had a situation where, per an investigation, the feds came over, took it over. Now, obviously, we have other events. We have had Super Bowl. We've had many different events after 9/11 when all the presidents came, and it was run by the Secret Service and different entities. We've never had an investigation that required this, which a federal investigation does when you're dealing with acts of terrorism. And because of who the actor or actors are, that it requires them to take the investigation over and utilize their resources going forward.
If this wasn't a lone wolf, and we don't know if it was or wasn't, if this wasn't somebody who acted alone, what are police and FBI doing? Are they trying to chase down other people, work surveillance? How does that work if, in fact, this person may have had assistance or help, whoever he turns out to be?
Well, it becomes a massive effort. So if you can imagine one room right now in an area in the city where you have everyone, NOPD, ATF, FBI, every single entity, Secret Service, everyone getting involved, wanting to help. Everyone wants to run down a part of the lead. What's this individual's social media? What social media accounts did they have? What names did they use? And what names and emails led to different accounts? So they're tracking all of that. What did this individual Google, if ever, at a certain point? Do they have any local addresses? Where did the truck come from? What's the license plate on the truck? Is it a good plate? Did this come from a house in Texas? Do a search warrant on the house in Texas. Were they staying in New Orleans for a period of time also? Search warrant on the house in New Orleans. Where else did they go where the crime cameras saw they're going inside the city? You have cameras on almost every single street, aside from just crime cameras. Go back and interview those people now, then taking the routes that these people or individual drove last night, and going back through those routes. Where are these IEDs being found? If the IEDs are being imploded or exploded, and they're being done in a cautious manner, ATF goes back and then redevelops those to figure out if they're the same ones who made them. So there's an enormous amount of things happening all at once, and everyone's doing their fair share.
Now, could this have ever been prevented? I know that's been the big question, is about the security that's been out there. In your opinion, do you think something like this could have been prevented in the French Quarter with our security plan that was in place for the Sugar Bowl and New Year's Eve festivities?
In past years, we've had certain plans where certain things have happened where I think you remember they've even brought dump trucks in, and those dump trucks cordoned off streets so you couldn't get to that inner perimeter of Bourbon Street. You couldn't get to that inner perimeter of the French Quarter. Those years, yes, that would have absolutely prevented a vehicle from doing this. Sometimes during Mardi Gras, you'll have certain hard barricades that'll prevent people from getting through. In this, is it possible to do it? Yes, absolutely. Did something potentially fail in this? It may have, but they're going to have to go back and evaluate it and look at it.
Mike, stay right here because we're going to leave you on set. We want your expertise in real time when information comes in. We can tell you that from the White House press pool, the president is in constant contact with high-level FBI and DHS to be apprised of the situation. But we want to talk about another federal official right now. A federal delegation is getting wind of this, but we're going to keep you here while we, I believe, go to Congressman Troy Carter.
And Congressman Carter, we want to just hear from you. I know that your thoughts and prayers are really with the victims right now. I think we're just having a little bit of an audio issue with his Zoom link. We're going to get back to him in just a few moments.
As soon as we work that out, we do want to hear what Congressman Carter has to say. I think he's back. And look, Congressman, for those that don't remember this, some of us do of a certain age. You were a former city councilman who has deep ties to the French Quarter and represented that district when you were on the city council back in the 90s and early 2000s.
That is correct. I served on the city council for multiple terms, so I understand intimately the ins and outs of downtown and the French Quarter. I would caution everyone to please, this is not a time to come out to see and to look what's going on. Please cooperate with our local, state, and federal officials. I have been in communication with the FBI, the White House, and Secretary Mayorkas of Homeland Security, every possible resource has been dispatched to the city of New Orleans and to downtown to make sure that we secure the area, identify any other possible threats, be they bombs or any other devices. The ones that we're aware of, we have detonated, and that area is now safe. We continue to gather information. We know that it appears to have been a lone suspect who was taken down by law enforcement. We know that he was driving a vehicle that appears to have had Texas license plates. This appears to be someone that is from the local metropolitan area. We can't say much more about any of the other information other than every possible resource with federal, local, and state agencies being employed. We're in constant communication with the White House, with the FBI, to make sure that we are securing the area for visitors and residents alike. This is an horrific situation. New Orleans, of course, is no stranger to being able to manage large groups and activities. So be assured that you have the absolute best trained people to address these issues at this time.
All right, Congressman Troy Carter, thank you so much for joining us, giving us your insight. If you continue to get any new developments, just please pass them on to us.
You have been listening to our local NBC News station, WDSU, but I want to come back now to our NBC News intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter, who's been on the phone with his sources. And Tom, you have some new information for us of what you're learning about this investigation into that deadly truck ramming in New Orleans. Walk us through it.
Yeah, Holly, what I can tell you is this is a significant counterterrorism investigation being conducted by the FBI. And at this hour, what they're looking into is whether or not the individual responsible for this attack was firing a long gun into the crowd while they were driving down Bourbon Street, apparently engaged with police, possibly using a long gun. We talked about that just a few moments ago. Possibly using a long gun, so semi-automatic rifle or a rifle, in order to basically, when the car comes to a stop, firing at police officers. We know several were hit. No life-threatening injuries are expected there for the officers. However, we do hear that the injuries to the people that were either run over or possibly shot in the course of this attack are very serious, Hallie, truly horrific injuries. And so a number of people are really trying to get the best life-saving care that they can provide in New Orleans. But it would not surprise officials if this death toll rose at this point, just given the severity and the nature of this attack. It is an attack. The FBI is investigating as an apparent act of terrorism. To that end, Hallie, if you look at a photo of this truck, and I understand we have one now that we've been able to confirm, and you look at the back of the truck, affixed to the hitch where you might put a trailer on, this late model white pickup truck, there is a pipe, a stick. It's white in color. And then on top of that, there's a black cloth that's wrapped around it. And we're told that investigators are looking at what is either printed on that, written on that, any sort of logos or insignias. They're acutely focused on that when it comes to motive. That's what they're looking at right now. And I think that's provided them some clarity and the reason why they're going to call this a terrorism attack, because what is written on that is indicative of an ideology or a motive. We're not quite ready to report that yet. We're just looking for some more information, Hallie, but this is definitely a significant terrorism investigation, and there's a number of different components that are moving on it, and we're going to continue to track it and obviously update you. But I think the key updates here are, number one, looking into whether or not this person was firing into the crowd while conducting this vehicle ramming attack, that they may have used a long gun, and indications are that the death toll is unfortunately expected to rise given the severity and nature of the injuries and what this individual did here. So we will continue to update everybody, but that vehicle is of intense focus, and as we've been reporting, contains a Texas plate. Now, just because it contains a Texas plate, for example, I've rented cars in the Northeast that have had Texas plates. So we can't say definitively that is the clue that points investigators to a specific location, but obviously it's a big clue, Allie.
Tom, a couple of quick follow-up questions for you here, because if people have been listening to this NBC News special report over the course of the last 90 minutes or so, they may have heard the state's lieutenant governor in an interview with our local station, WDSU, reference a question about whether or not that may have been an ISIS flag. To be clear, we're talking about the cloth on the back of the pickup truck that's affixed to the hitch. To be clear, that is not confirmed, right, Tom? We don't know what that is. That is speculation at this point. I want to address it because it was on our air, but I just want to be crystal clear on that.
I would personally be looking for a little bit more information before I would be comfortable reporting the specific nature of what's on the cloth. We just, it's anytime we're talking about a specific motive or a specific incident, we want to be make sure to the best of our human ability we have the information locked in. I have nothing that disputes what the lieutenant governor said, and as I just reported, I think that cloth is going to be a big clue for investigators.
Another question that has come up is whether this individual was acting alone. Are you getting any guidance or indication from your sources on that piece of it?
Officials have not stated anything publicly about that at this point, one way or the other.
Got it. Tom Winter, thank you so much for your reporting. A lot of avenues here that I know you will continue to investigate with your sources. Tom, thank you very much. Our NBC News intelligence and law enforcement correspondent. I want to go now to Ken Delanian, another NBC News correspondent who covers similar territory. Ken, talk us through some of these questions around security, specifically around the barricades that police say were in place. They say this driver went around the barricades when heading down Bourbon Street. Eyewitnesses have described it as traveling for at least a couple of blocks as it relates to this pickup truck, but questions around a potential bollard replacement plan that had been in the works ahead of the Super Bowl in New Orleans next month, and whether these barricades were enough or placed in the right locations. What do we know?
Yeah, well, obviously, they're still trying to determine that question, Hallie. But what I can tell you is, look, the Super Bowl is considered a special security event. And so federal and local law enforcement pull out all the stops for the Super Bowl. The FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, they come in with everything they've got. And so they create a maximalist security perimeter. Other events do not get that level of treatment. And it's very possible here that the barricades that were erected, well, it's obvious that the barricades were not sufficient to stop a vehicle attack like this. And look, we saw this back in 2017 in New York City when this happened in Lower Manhattan. After that event, the NYPD reevaluated their approach to crowd events and mass gatherings in New York City, and they began using sand trucks and dump trucks to try to head off avenues of vehicle attack. It's the kind of thing that, occurs to people once it's happened. There may have been a lack of imagination here, but that's not to fault anyone. Look, crowds have been gathering on Bourbon Street for more than a century. Nothing like this has ever happened. So New Orleans authorities can be forgiven for not anticipating the idea of a vehicle attack. And look, even if they erected more additional barricades, you cannot possibly stop every avenue of approach in a city where people are gathering block after block. So that's it's a tough question. It's no doubt going to be the subject of a lot of introspection and examination in the days and weeks ahead, whether the barricades should have been better, whether there should have been more security in place. And also just go back to this the other question that you were talking to Tom about, the question of the black flag. Again, you were right to point out we don't know exactly what that was. We do know that law enforcement is looking closely at this question of whether it was a terrorist flag, whether there was a terrorist or ISIS message on it. What we do know, though, is the majority of these kinds of vehicle attacks in the past have been were ISIS inspired. There was one in Munich back in 2016 and the one in New York City in 2017, both determined to have been ISIS inspired. There was one recently in Germany on December 20th. The motive for that one is as yet undetermined, so not clear what happened there. But this is a hallmark, these kinds of vehicle attacks, of an ISIS-inspired attack, Hallie.
Ken Delanian, thank you very much. I know you'll continue to work the phones as well. Let me go now to Gabe Gutierrez, our NBC News senior White House correspondent, because Gabe, we understand not only has the president been briefed on what happened this morning in New Orleans, but he has been in touch with the mayor and with local leaders there as well, right?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Look, President Biden has been briefed throughout the morning and is expected to continue to be briefed throughout the day. Right now, he's in Wilmington, Delaware, after ringing in the new year, attending the wedding of his niece. And we understand, according to the White House, that this morning he has been briefed by senior FBI and Homeland Security officials. And in speaking with the mayor, he offered full federal support. Now, Hallie, as you know, the role for President Biden is not just commander-in-chief, will be consoler-in-chief, but we do not yet know whether he plans to make any official public comments on his way from Wilmington, Delaware to Camp David, where he's expected to go a little later on today. Now, we are right here in South Florida. This is where President-elect Trump spent the new year. He attended a black tie reception at his Mar-a-Lago estate last night. We have reached out to the Trump transition to see whether they have any comment on the unfolding situation in New Orleans. So far, we have not heard back. But again, Hallie, President Biden has been briefed by top officials at the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and he will continue to monitor this throughout the day. It's a very fluid situation, though, so federal officials are being very cautious on what they say as the situation unfolds.
Gabe Gutierrez live for us in South Florida near the Mar-a-Lago home of President-elect Trump. We will be monitoring, of course, for any other national leaders and their response to what has happened this morning in New Orleans. All of it, of course, is in place as the city is getting ready for the Sugar Bowl later on tonight. The city of New Orleans, where tens of thousands of people are expected at the Superdome for that big college football game between Georgia and Notre Dame. You have a lot of fans who have come into town, and you've heard already discussion of the security posture in place. For more on that, I want to bring in Evie Pompouris, former Secret Service special agent, who is joining us now. Evie, talk us through any changes you may be anticipating ahead of tonight's game.
I think we'll be seeing a larger amount of police presence. Help has gone out. You're going to look at more state police, local police departments coming in, giving that support, securing the area. We were just hearing earlier on from the local reporting that they're actually going to stop vehicular traffic in certain areas so that people cannot actually drive through, that they're looking to have more pedestrian traffic. So it's likely you'll see people parking a little further out. There is even speculation that they would be shutting down some of the parking garage areas. That's anything that's a little bit closer. So you could see that they're putting in all these measures because they truly just want to make sure they have this locked and tight to prevent anything from happening. A couple of extra things you can do, which I'm not sure that they are going to do. Sometimes you'll see on the outer perimeter areas a removal of trash cans or mailboxes. Why is this important? Well, in case somebody has an IED or a homemade device, you want to prevent areas where packages or items can be concealed. It's something they actually do here in New York City. New Year's Eve, they actually remove the mailboxes and trash cans from the New York Times Square area because you can just dump anything in there and it's concealed. So those are things you can do. You're going to see less vehicular traffic. You're also going to see probably the funneling of people, extra police presence, magnetometers, also canine. Canines also used in areas like this. You want to have people going through the magnetometers. You're obviously looking for weapons, guns, knives, anything like that. But in addition to that, having the canine picking up any type of powder or residue on a person. Fire trucks, police presence, in addition to, you're going to have fire trucks there. You have to think, any type of arson, fire, you're really going to be checking off all those boxes. What do I need to look at? Again, you want to be creative, think like an attacker. If I want to do harm, how could I do it? So having those fire people there, having paramedics, ambulances on the ready should something happen. And even when you do outer perimeters, it's not an extreme thing to think of radiological or biological attacks. Radiological, any type of devices coming in, you can put sensors there, have people actually at that outer perimeter, seeing if they pick up on people. We would have those all the time. And then actually inside stadiums, we would have individuals walking around in the stadium, just going through the people in the crowd in the stadium, seeing if anybody hits or we pick up on any type of radiological residue on that person. Chemical, biological, another concern. So having what they call a decontamination site. So what does that mean? It means if somebody were to release in the area a chemical, some type of biological attack, you want to have the ability to treat the people there. All right, so they will have a designated area, and this is where the fire department comes in. This is where you bring in, usually for something like that, you would use water to decontaminate people. You would set up a decontamination site where you would herd people in and clean them off. So these are kind of all the things they should be thinking about and checking off those boxes. Again, it's a site that's got a structure to it. It's got walls, anything with walls, and when you can funnel people in and out within certain points, it's so much easier to secure rather than an open venue like we saw here with the crowd and vehicles moving. So when you can minimize and mitigate all these different variables, your chances of success in securing a site is definitely heightened up.
Evie Pompouras, thank you very much. Obviously, this is having reverberations well beyond the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana, given how many events, how many parades, how many games typically happen on New Year's Day. We are learning now from the city of Atlanta that they are boosting security ahead of the Peach Bowl there later on today. We also understand that in Philadelphia, where there is the Mummers Parade on New Year's Day, they are closely monitoring areas involved. Of course, in just a couple of minutes, the Rose Parade will begin out west in Pasadena, California. And there, too, they are reiterating that they have a number of security measures in place to keep people safe for both the parade and the Rose Bowl later on today. Emily Aketa has more on that angle of this story. Emily, good morning.
Hey there, Hallie. Well, you can trust that officials of major events playing out across the country are paying close attention and taking it into consideration to how they are securing their own major events. As you said, from Atlanta with the Peach Bowl to the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, and the city of Pasadena underscoring and reinforcing that they have been preparing for months for this parade to get underway, which traditionally attracts 800,000 people, about to play out any minute now in its 136th year. They also say that they had a hard shutdown of vehicles along the entire parade route, and that they have added very robust barriers at intersections along the Rose Parade route as well, with 1,000 or so law enforcement officers working the parade and then later on the game as well. We have witnessed cities across the country amp up security ahead of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day celebrations. We saw it here in New York City. One of the things, in addition to the canines and the drones that New York City rolled out and the thousands of police officers, were sand trucks, dump trucks, barricades, concrete blockades to prevent things like these vehicle ramming attacks. We saw one happen just a few weeks ago in Germany at the Christmas market. Now, we know that there were some kind of barriers in place, according to police, because they say that the driver drove around the barriers to drive down Bourbon Street in New Orleans. We just don't know to what degree, but it's certainly something that's going to be evaluated very closely in the aftermath of this terrible tragedy, Hallie.
Emily Aketa live for us with more on the preparations coast to coast for other New Year's Day events today, as New Orleans is beginning its 2025 with this nightmare of a scenario in the French Quarter. You're seeing some of the video on the left side of your screen, some of the aftermath now in the daytime. People leaving after a truck plowed into a crowd of people celebrating New Year's Eve just after 3 o'clock this morning, killing at least 10 people. 30 plus others are in the hospital with injuries, including 2 police officers who were shot when the driver of that truck opened fire. Police are also looking into a homemade bomb, an improvised explosive device on scene as well. The city's superintendent of the police department saying that this suspect was hell-bent on carnage. And you can see some of the aftermath of the carnage there. I want to bring in now Rob D'Amico. I believe we have a former FBI agent who's worked as a nexus to counterterrorism. And Rob, we understand that the driver, the suspect here, is dead. At this point, however, the identification process is well underway. Police are looking to suss out any kind of motive here to try to understand why he did this.
Yeah, I think they probably have the ID already, and they're just not ready to release it. There's too much information with the vehicle and all the other things going on that they don't have a good idea who he is. But I think right now they're, again, looking at, we talked about that flag on the back of the truck, and that could be a reason the FBI quickly took this over if it indicates something beyond what they initially thought. But I think what everyone's talking about now is all these other events. The security's being enhanced. Now, some of it has already been done. These were big games to begin with. So inside the target that they talked about with all the security, the problem is what they're going to do is they're going to start pushing these crowds further and further out to walk. And these groups do not look at going after hard targets. And I mean, a hard target is inside the event or inside the perimeters. But what they start doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to restrict traffic around it. Now you're going to have a bunch of Uber drop-offs further out. People are going to have to start walking in. They look for the easy target. So if you have someone else, even if they're not part of a conspiracy or a terrorist plotting group, even if they're just inspired or triggered by this event to do something, they're going to look for these groups that are forming to walk in. And they're going to go to where they can get without getting through a blockade. So I think as much as security has to take, you now have to be careful of any large group gathering outside of that event to start walking in, and be, again, head on their swivel, looking out for things, hearing about a car roaring, speeding up or something, where you're going to go, because you can't secure everything. And it's now just pushing these groups further out that they're going to be accessible to a vehicle.
Highlights the difficulty in protecting and hardening these so-called soft targets, Rob.
Yeah, I think like New Orleans probably should look at some better barricades. You see the ones that the big thing is they have to clean the streets up after all these events, and they have the crews drive in, so you don't want to put really hard targets. But I've seen some cities that put rising steel barricades from underground that they can put up for events to block it off, and then put down for when vehicles do have to get in for other reasons. I think they're going to have to start looking at that for places like this that have these big events all the time. I think it's worth the investment to be able to do that, to slow the vehicles down, not get them access in, because it is too hard. As you see, like I've worked the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York City for counter drones, but you look how they lock it down with the garbage trucks and sand trucks. But it's very difficult to put in place all the time for a big event. But again, it starts pushing the crowd out. They're looking for the easy target. So they know if they're walking a further distance, if they're just going to drive where those crowds do form.
Rob D'Amico. Rob, thank you very much. As mentioned, President Biden has been briefed on what happened this morning in New Orleans. We've heard from the White House already. We are now hearing from the incoming president, President-elect Donald Trump. Gabe Gutierrez has more on that new statement. Gabe, what you got?
Hi there, Hallie. Well, that statement was posted to a social media platform just moments ago, and it says in part that our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil, the president-elect says. Again, we're here in South Florida, where the president-elect spent his New Year's Eve at his Mar-a-Lago estate, attending a black tie reception there. We are still monitoring President Biden. He's expected to leave from Wilmington, Delaware to Camp David later on today. And as you said, Hallie, we did hear from the White House earlier today that the president has been briefed. He has spoken with the mayor of New Orleans, and he was briefed by senior FBI and Homeland Security officials. He is pledging the full federal support to the city of New Orleans and plans to be briefed on this throughout the day. We do not yet know, though, if he plans to make any official public statement to cameras as he makes his way to Camp David. Hallie.
That would not be without the realm, outside the realm of possibility there. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you very much, live for us down there in West Palm Beach in South Florida. Again, this morning, 2025, New Year's Day, off to a horrific start for the city of New Orleans after that deadly truck ramming that killed at least 10 people. It is possible that we may learn that death toll could go up. Some 30-plus people are at local hospitals in New Orleans, including 2 police officers who were shot when that driver, that suspect, who's believed to be dead, opened fire. We are expecting an update from law enforcement, looking at the clock in just about an hour from now. But for now, that concludes our NBC News special report. We will have continuing coverage on our streaming channel, NBC News Now, and online at NBCnews.com. We will monitor the latest and come back on the air with developments as news warrants. I'm Hallie Jeff. Thanks for watching.